because you might work.
I'll try that. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this Budget Council meeting in the City Hall Council Chamber. I'd like to welcome some journalism students who are with us today for part of the meeting. They're from Sunderland University. I hope that you find these proceedings interesting. Just to let everyone know, there is a division bell which will ring 3 times once the vote is complete. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. I welcome members of the press and public who may be viewing this meeting remotely. As this is a Budget Council, a recorded vote will be taken on the budget proposals and on any amendments proposed. We now move into the formal business of the meeting. Can we take the notice convening the meeting as read? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have apologies from Councillors Mason Gage, Nicholson, M Walker, Walton, Wood and Honorary Alderman Forbes and Tate, and Councillor George Smith may be late. I'm not sure if he's in the meeting yet or not. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any further apologies?
Councillor McDonough.
Councillor Smith.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Ty will be late due to work.
Leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Chapman.
The next item is the minutes of the last ordinary meeting of the Council held on the 24th of January 2024. Can we agree the minutes? Members are reminded that dispensations have been granted to all those members who have applied for them in order to deal with matters relating to the budget and setting the council tax. The declarations of interest we have received prior to the meeting are displayed at the entrance to the chamber. If anyone has anything further to declare, can they indicate accordingly? It is with sadness that I advise Council of the passing of former Councillor Alan Wright, who served as a Conservative member of the Council representing St Chad's Ward between May 2008 and May 2012. Alan served on a number of committees, including Planning and Highways, and was Vice Chair of the Environment and Attractive City Scrutiny Committee. He was also Chair of Governors at East Harrington Primary, a Governor at Barnes Juniors, and Chair of the Barnes Residents Association. Alan was President of Sunderland Conservatives and election agent for Barnes. Will you please join me in sending condolences to the family and friends of Alan Wright? I ask you all to stand in silence for a minute as a mark of respect. Thank you. I'd like to thank those members who have given notice of their wish to speak. Where notice has been given, the member will be invited to speak at the appropriate time. If any member who hasn't given prior notice wishes to speak at any point during the meeting, they should please raise their hand to indicate and speak when invited to do so. That concludes my announcements. I now call upon the Leader to move the approval and adoption of the report of the Cabinet.
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, do you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Mayor.
Leader, if you would like to speak to the Cabinet report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move the revenue budget and capital programme for next year. As in previous years, we have worked very hard to ensure this is a positive budget, which allows us to continue with our ambitious social and economic regeneration plans for the city, whilst ensuring we continue to protect and support our residents most in need. As ever, I would like to pay tribute to my fellow members of the Council and our hard-working employees, making every effort in collaboration with our valued partners to support all residents and businesses as best we can through these difficult times. We have continued to review our city plan on an annual basis since it was first published in 2019, with our latest plan covering 2024 through to 2035, reconfirming our vision that Sunderland will be a connected, international city with opportunities for all. As you can see around us, some major aspects of that are taking shape more and more, with key developments being delivered by the Council in partnership with the private sector. The regular review of the city plan enables us to ensure it is a dynamic framework so that we are clear about where considerable progress is being made as we work towards our shared ambitions, and that our efforts and resources remain fully focused on delivering further improvements and opportunities for everyone in our city. Key to this is understanding the challenges for the city and its people. And as I've said at this meeting of Council before, Madam Mayor, it's a moving picture as the cumulative impacts of national and global economic conditions and the government's resulting policies and actions create a difficult legacy, and that will stay with us for some years to come. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, the energy crisis, and sadly the unrest and conflict in other parts of the world have had a significant impact on the country's finances. But in each budget round, the government's spending decisions and choices between what to fund and what not to fund, who to support and who not to support, and who has to take the most pain, has set us on this current path where people are really struggling. So as ever, Madam Mayor, this Council is ready to grasp every opportunity to make sure our ambitious social and economic regeneration plans continue to be delivered, and a strong recovery from the challenges in recent years is achieved at the earliest stage. The last 12 months have seen outstanding progress, evidenced by the ongoing developments around us here at Riverside Sunderland, including this award-winning building, providing a vital public service and community hub for our residents and customers. The regeneration of Riverside Sunderland is acting as a strong catalyst to drive the whole city's economy, and our clear ambitions are attracting significant private sector backing. Legal and General have invested in the soon-to-be-completed Maker and Faber buildings right next to us, which in the coming months will be home to more businesses, more jobs and generate more footfall in and around the city centre. All in all, this new business district with 1 million square feet of modern office space will create 10,000 quality jobs. Across the road in Keele Square, as promised, it looks quite different to this time last year, where once again businesses have recognised our ambition and the potential to do successful business here, and we have seen the opening of the Holiday Inn, the Keele Tavern and most recently the Botanist. A range of other outlets are springing up around the city centre, and our residents and visitors are thoroughly enjoying the experience. We are also forging ahead with the building of a thousand innovative, exciting, energy-efficient homes on Riverside to rent and buy, and work is underway to build the new pedestrian crossing to connect these new communities spanning the River Wear. Work is also well underway on the new eye hospital just out of the window behind me, and construction is also well underway on our new culture house, providing us with a new state-of-the-art city library and creative hubs. And then, in line with our clear commitment to a carbon-neutral, cleaner, greener, healthier city, there will be a stunning Riverside Park and a green boulevard in the heart of the city centre. It's fantastic to see the new Housing, Innovation and Construction Skills Academy under construction across the river, which is a game-changing initiative by Sunderland College, fully supported by the Council, to help residents to gain the skills and qualifications to work in this important sector for our city's future. Also on that side of the river, the renovation of the former railway stables, also known as sheepfolds, again providing opportunities for local people to train and work in building and construction, is coming along at pace. Set to open in May, it's going to create further jobs and yet another exciting leisure and events destination in the city, with some fantastic food, drink and lifestyle businesses opening their doors. And on the site of the former Civic Centre, as promised, we are seeing significant progress with the housing development there, adding further to the city centre offer of a fantastic place to live, work and play. Our stunning seafront continues to thrive too, as an increasingly diverse and vibrant leisure offer builds and expands. And we are still leading the way in becoming one of the UK's smartest cities, creating next-generation digital infrastructure that will leave no one and nowhere behind, in partnership with our strategic partner, Bolden Networks. We've been really clear that to create the opportunities our residents want and deserve, good jobs, healthier living, great housing, and the lifelong opportunity to learn and grow, being at the forefront of developing new technologies will have a huge positive impact and support and attract businesses to invest and innovate so that they can play their full part in creating opportunities for our residents. We're well into the programme of connecting fibre to every premise in Sunderland and enabling 5G Wi-Fi networks to give everybody ultra-fast connectivity anywhere in the city. At the end of January, we launched a project enabling 22 community digital health hubs to be rolled out, connecting people and tackling digital challenges such as limited connectivity, lack of access to digital services and skills, and the cost barriers associated with going online. And owing to our significant reputation in the digital sector, we have developed the Sunderland Advanced Mobility Shuttle, a national pilot for a self-driving passenger shuttle service. The shuttles will travel on a circuit between City Hall, the hospital and the university's city campus. This builds on the groundbreaking Connected Automotive Logistics project, also piloted here in Sunderland, enabling self-driving lorries in the Nissan supply chain and production process. And finally, again reinforcing our world-leading reputation for building the industries of the future, we have had the recent announcement about the new clean energy and green manufacturing investment zone to be located on and around the International Advanced Manufacturing Park and Hillthorne Business Park through in Washington. Already, we have companies in the low-carbon and high-tech manufacturing fields considering expansion or relocation onto the proposed zone. The new International Advanced Manufacturing Strategic Site, expanding on the success of IAMP as part of the wider regional North East Investment Zone, which is set to create 10,000 jobs. So, Sunderland is right at the heart of these plans and is being recognised as the place to do business in these sectors. With that, Madam Mayor, I am pleased to announce that there is more in store in the year ahead, ensuring we continue our journey towards delivering the city plan vision. Madam Mayor, we will continue to invest in our city. We will continue to invest to protect the most vulnerable people in our city, and we will continue to invest in services that our residents tell us are important to them, such as working with our partners to tackle antisocial behaviour and increase community safety. We are now well into the second decade of this Conservative government's dysfunction, misrule and mismanagement, and councils across the country are crippled by the impact of prolonged and deep real-term cuts to funding over this period, alongside increasing cost and demand pressures, particularly in social care. We are again told by the government that our core spending power is to rise in 2024-25, but again a proportion of this is reliant on hitting our council taxpayers with a rise of 5% in council tax. That's right, Madam Mayor, yet again the government is expecting us to increase council tax by 5% from April, at a time when they know that most households in the country are already seriously struggling due to their mismanagement of the economy. The additional £500 million announced earlier this month for social care, with a focus on children's social care, is welcomed and very much needed, but it does not go far enough to deal with the significant pressures that all councils across the country with social care responsibilities are having to contend with, nor does it make up for the real-term reduction in funding that this Conservative government has presided over for the last 14 years. Significant inflationary pressures faced by care providers and staff recruitment and retention in the context of a chronically depleted workforce, all at a time when hospitals are needed to improve on their discharge rates into a care sector which was already teetering on the edge. These financial pressures are not restricted to adult social care, with children's services facing similar inflationary pressures from providers who look after our most vulnerable children in the city. The levels of funding provided, compared to the current and expected cost and demand pressures, mean 2024-25 is going to be another challenging year from a budgetary perspective, and continues to lay bare the disproportionate funding reductions we have had to endure since 2010. Although the social care sector continues to dominate the headlines and uses an ever-increasing proportion of our annual spending requirement, our other vital services are not immune to those inflationary pressures. Pay rises and general cost pressures on goods and services mean all council services are feeling the squeeze when attempting to maintain our high standards. And so, with these challenges in mind, we must focus on setting a balanced budget for next year. Since 2010, we have worked hard to protect residents and communities from the impact of the government's funding cuts. I can confirm that budget savings proposed today total £6.7 million and have been very carefully considered to minimise impact on our residents and our communities. Madam Mayor, it is important to note that because of the difficult decisions our council has taken in the past, coupled with our prudent financial management, we are able to rely on reserves to support next year's budget to protect the delivery of our services. We will ensure that we continue to protect the most vulnerable citizens within our community through investment in children's and adult services, with the inclusion of over £21.7 million of additional funding next year to support the already mentioned cost and demand pressures. Madam Mayor, I have outlined a revenue budget to ensure that excellent day-to-day services continue to be delivered in the city and our residents continue to be supported. And as I have outlined, we are committed to delivering on our city plan and on our ambitions for Sunderland so that greater opportunities are created for our residents. I am very pleased to say, therefore, we are continuing with our ambitious capital programme into next year and beyond, and we will be investing across a wide range of areas. In regeneration schemes, we will be investing further at Riverside Sunderland, the Culture House, Sunnyside, the train station, in our highways network, the port, and at the International Advanced Manufacturing Park in Washington, to name but a few. In continuing to create our smart city, we will further build on our partnership with Bolden Networks, invest in smart technologies to support service delivery, and keep Sunderland firmly on the global map when it comes to the smart agenda, helping our residents and businesses grow. And in schools, we are supporting new businesses and refurbishments across the city. Madam Mayor, these are just some of the headlines, and our plans also include significant investments in our parks and open spaces, in line with our commitment to be one of the first net zero carbon cities in the country. All of these investments will help grow our economy, ensuring we are a city where businesses want to invest and people can benefit from widespread opportunities and a good quality of life. However, this continued ambition and investment needs to be funded, and difficult decisions must be made to deliver a sustainable budget. Madam Mayor, raising council tax remains a difficult decision for all councils and is not a decision we take lightly. If we do not raise council tax, we will need to cut services and reduce our investment into key priority areas. That would mean cuts in services to those most vulnerable within our communities. And with that in mind, it is therefore proposed to raise council tax by a total of 4.99%. This includes a 2% uplift in the social care precept implemented by the government to help fund the cost of adult social care. This increase represents an increase of £1.05 a week for a Band A property or £1.57 a week for the average Band D property. Although we would rather not increase our council tax, Sunderland's council tax remains the lowest in Tyne and Wear and indeed the lowest in the wider North East region. Madam Mayor, we must ensure we continue to budget and plan in a financially resilient manner. Although we must use £9 million of reserves next year to balance our budget, we are well placed to allow this one-off use, whilst maintaining appropriate levels of reserves for 2024-25 and beyond. We must recognise that we cannot use reserves to prop up the revenue budget on an ongoing basis. But these current difficult times are truly exceptional and entirely created by 14 years of Tory budget cuts to local authorities where northern councils such as Sunderland have been disproportionately hit the hardest. Let me be clear, whilst we have a balanced budget for next year, using an essential level of reserves, the medium-term financial plan points to an ongoing savings requirement totalling over £44 million by 2027-2028. And that's after 14 years of cuts from this government already. Sustainable options must therefore be developed and delivered. Madam Mayor, shortly my Cabinet colleagues will briefly present their own individual portfolios. In the meantime, I commend to Council this evening both the revenue budget and capital programme, which will enable us to continue to invest in our city and deliver the best services we possibly can for our residents. Thank you very much.
Before dealing with any amendments, the individual portfolios will be introduced by the portfolio holders. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, as Deputy Leader and Portfolio for Clean Green City, I endorse and second the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council. Today's budget proposals allow for the investment this city needs to meet our regeneration aspirations, to protect the vulnerable and also our wider resident population, as this ongoing cost of living crisis is impacting in some way every single household in our city. We must also balance our obligations of meeting residents and business need with ensuring this is carried out in a financially responsible manner. With this in mind, Madam Mayor, I have to commend my Cabinet colleagues, elected members and staff for their efforts over many months in producing the budget proposed here today, and for ensuring that those budget proposals that are brought forward are sought to minimise the impact on services as far as possible. I also want to pay tribute to the continued work of the Scrutiny Coordinating Committee, who have also played an important role in the production of these budget proposals today. The revenue budget presented allows us to protect essential, much-valued services to residents and businesses across our city. As members will appreciate, the economy is still recovering from a period of unprecedented inflationary pressures, and to continue to deliver the same level of services to residents and businesses in of itself is no small feat. Notwithstanding this, however, significant additional resources have been needed to support the continued ongoing demand and complex needs of those residents who rely on our social care services. Moving on to the longer-term investment in our city, we continue to deliver on this through our ambitious capital programme. The development of Riverside Sunderland is very much underway, with, as the leader has mentioned, further visible investment now in the city centre through the redevelopment of Sunderland Central Station and construction of Culture House, as just a couple of these examples. Looking beyond the city centre, we continue our investment at the International Advanced Manufacturing Park and also Hillthorne Business Park in Washington. IAMP will be home to the first large-scale gigafactory in the country, building on AESC's long-standing track record at its existing facility. With hundreds of millions of pounds of private investment by AESC into their new battery production facility, alongside Nissan's own additional investment committed to building further new models in Sunderland plant, this will drive our green economy and, importantly, bring many new jobs to the area in the months and the years to come. As the leader has said, with the establishment of the new International Advanced Manufacturing Strategic Site, expanding on the success of IAMP to date, this scale of investment demonstrates Sunderland is the place to do business. In partnership with our NHS colleagues, the redevelopment of the Sunderland Eye Infirmary is well underway on the Sunderland Riverside site, with works having started over the last few months and completion due in spring 26. We are also continuing to provide financial assistance in the form of economic development grants to further stimulate inward investment and job growth in key sectors by businesses of all sizes across the whole of the city. Our port continues to grow. Our investments in the port's enterprise zone sites is attracting significant private interest, with both Quantafuel and Wastefund progressing with their plans, bringing more jobs and investment to the city. The budget proposals include further investment within my portfolio. This includes investment in coastal defences, ongoing regeneration across our parks and open spaces, improvements to the parking offer at Herrington Country Park, a tree management programme and investment in the refuse and environmental services fleet so that we continue to deliver the services our residents value. We are continuing to invest in carbon reduction, harnessing the energy of our young people, our businesses, our partners and of all our residents to play our part as a city in tackling the global challenge of climate change. As a council, we are continuing to recognise the vital importance of investing in the city to help it improve its resilience and encourage our own self-sufficiency. I can confirm that the proposed increase in council tax is not a decision that is being taken lightly, Madam Mayor. However, the government have clearly set out over the past 14 years to shift this burden away from central government towards the council taxpayer. With that, Madam Mayor, I feel that the revenue budget and capital programme presented today recognises the financial challenges we and our residents and our businesses are facing, whilst also supporting the pursuit of our ambitions to drive our city forward as articulated through our city plan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, as Cabinet Secretary, I endorse the budget proposals presented by the Leader of the Council and seconded by the Deputy Leader, Councillor Rowntree. And I think what you'll hear from a number of my colleagues is a lot of positive work that's planned in the year ahead with regards to the budget, but it's done in a context of now the 14th year of austerity. As the Leader has set out, the budget planning during another unprecedented year has been challenging, but starting from a robust financial position here in Sunderland that this council has, as we're able to present a budget which protects our residents, protects our services and, importantly, allows the ambitious plan that the Leader referenced, the city plan, to continue. But let us be clear, difficult decisions have been made and will continue to be a necessity until this government recognises that councils need to be funded properly Or, Madam Mayor, the government is replaced, and hopefully quite soon. Local government remains underfunded. The health crisis is needing social care to increase capacity, and high inflation continues to make vital services most costly for us to deliver. The government's planned adult social care charging reforms are not due to be implemented until 2025, which continues the mounting pressure for local government to raise funding locally. This, Madam Mayor, is just one example of the legacy of 14 years in which this government has utterly failed to fund services for the most vulnerable in our communities. As a way of impact, Madam Mayor, in relation to these 14 years of austerity, whether it be Tory Northumberland or Lib Dem led Durham or indeed Sunderland, councils are having to plough their limited financial reserves into a budget hole created by this government's deliberate choice, Madam Mayor, to cut funding to local government. If we take the issue of councils having to issue Section 114 notices, in effect where a council declares themselves bankrupt, these were first introduced in 1988 by Mrs Thatcher. Managed to get Mrs Thatcher into the conversation. But for the first 20 years, only 2 councils were ever found themselves in a position to issue such a notice. However, since 2018, a further 12 councils have had to do so, and it reflects the impact that this austerity has on council budgets. It is therefore no surprise that the LGA has raised concerns that around 1 in 5 councils now face bankruptcy within the next 2 years if nothing is done by central government. Madam Mayor, recent data from Sigoma shows that since 2010, the real council core spending power in England has been cut by this government on an average of 18.9%. However, for Sunderland, this cut has been much higher. It's been over 26% since 2010, or in real money, Madam Mayor, that's £924 for each household in this city each year that has been taken from us by this government. Against this backdrop of government funding cuts and consequential financial crisis in local government, we've ensured that our revenue and capital proposals have been through a rigorous scrutiny and consultation process during months of development, and I would indeed like to thank Cabinet members, officers who have all worked hard to produce the budget proposals presented today. Through my Cabinet Secretary portfolio, I continue to provide corporate oversight of the Council's budget into the medium term. The budget proposals today said the need to use a further £9 million of reserves, yes, a further amount of our much-needed reserves to support the Council in the coming year, to support the balancing of the budget. This must be a temporary measure, but one we believe is needed to protect our most vulnerable during the cost of living crisis and ensure we continue to deliver our services. The medium-term financial plan presented today is a detailed risk assessment of the cost pressures and funding assumptions. Inflationary pressures in the national economy continue to drive up the cost of goods, services and pay, impacting on all areas of service delivery. These, alongside the ongoing crisis in social care, is causing a vast majority of the £29 million of spending pressures and commitments the Council needs to manage going into the 24-25 financial year. Our own cautious and prudential approach to forecasting and planning seeks to mitigate this uncertainty where possible, with our overall financial positions demonstrating financial resilience in the 24-25 and beyond. But looking ahead, financial challenges still remain, and we cannot become one of the ever-growing number of councils around the country finding themselves in financial difficulties. The challenge to bridge the medium-term financial gap is significant, and one we must move to develop a plan for quickly through identifying further savings or securing further additional funding. As I mentioned, the impact on this process on services can be smoothed over time through the use of our prudentially accrued reserves, but they are time limited and at some point will run out. The financial resilience of local government across the whole country continues to be under strain. The funding increases provided by the government must adequately reflect this. However, given the government's previous record over the last 14 years, I do not hold out much hope. And Madam Mayor, it reminds me of the letter that the three leaders sent to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, imploring him to help bail out local government, and in particular Sunderland, and we're still waiting in that sense. And this budget reflects the failure of the government to hear our pleas with regards to supporting our local residents. Instead, the government's fair funding review, Madam Mayor, and business rates retention changes continue to be delayed, a statement I have made time and time again, and it's another failure of this government. The uncertainty of continued one-year government funding allocations makes it extremely difficult to proactively plan with confidence. We continue to put our case to government so that any new system fully protects northern cities like ours. I continue to be extremely concerned that this government will continue to reduce national support and increasingly force councils to rely on local sources of funding, mainly through increasing council tax, including the adult social care precept. Madam Mayor, this government must step up and it must take responsibility for its financial failures and not place them all at the door of local government and the local taxpayer. They must accept their responsibilities or, as I've mentioned before, move aside and be replaced at a hopefully soon general election. With regards to the need to the increase of council tax, the government is pushing us to increase council tax this year by 5%. The council continues to do its best to protect residents from the impact of the government's austerity measures that have been in place since 2010. The compound impact of the government's significant and disproportionate funding reductions in previous years, combined with inflation and social care pressures, means we are once again faced with overwhelming challenges. With regards to the level of council tax increase for the coming year, the local government finance settlement published by the government assumes a council tax rate of 4.99%. Raising council tax remains a difficult decision for all councils. If we do not raise council tax, we will need to cut services and reduce our investment into key priority areas. That would mean cuts in services to those most vulnerable in our communities and to the services which residents tell us are a high priority. Sorry, Madam Mayor. In order to prevent further cuts to frontline services and enable some essential investment in key priorities, it is therefore proposed to increase council tax as expected by the government, including the adult social care precept, and a total of 4.99% next year. Indeed, rather than find a national solution to funding of adult social care, the government continues to pass the buck to local councils and their residents to fund it through the adult social care precept. The proposed council tax for 24-25 now includes a cumulative impact of 17% of the total charge. It now relates to adult social care, a conscious decision made by this failed government. It is fair to say no one in this room wants to increase council tax. Our key task must be to protect residents as much as we can, but at the same time ensure we do not follow other councils finding themselves in financial difficulties. The consequences of all this is evident and affects councils regardless of their political control. And I do want to make that point, that it is regardless of political control. And the examples that come to mind are Birmingham, it's a Labour-controlled authority that recently had to issue a Section 114 notice, and their residents are now facing a 9.99% council tax. The previous year, it was only 2%. Woking, Madam Mayor, which is Lib Dem controlled, issued a Section 114 notice in June of 23, and also seen an expected 10% increase in council tax. Well, they were bankrupt. You took over and were bankrupt the year after, so I blame you. There we are. And Thurrock, of course. Thurrock issued a Section 114 notice in December 2022. So their residents have had nearly 2 years of this. First year, a 10% increase in council tax, and this year, a planned another 8%. The point I'm trying to make, though, Madam Mayor, is that this is a cross-party issue, it's across local government, and the important thing for ourselves is to ensure that our finances are secure, and that should always be the key point with regards to any budget. Madam Mayor, despite the proposed increase, based on what I understand from our neighbouring authorities and their council plans, our Band D council tax will still remain, as the leader said, the lowest in the region, Madam Mayor, indeed the lowest tax in the North East again. In comparison, and this is where I might slightly be a little bit political, comparison with regard to example Band D properties, if we take the Lib Dem led Durham, and I do accept that there's a few independents there as well, but it's Lib Dem led. Lib Dem leader there, and the Lib Dem paid £215.37 more than what we'll be paying in Sunderland. So there we are. And then we get on to Tory Northumberland, of course. Tory Northumberland, clearly a high-spending, high-tax authority, a whopping £357.65 that their residents will be paying in Northumberland. Madam Mayor, I feel it's important to reiterate what the leader has outlined. We will continue to protect our most vulnerable residents through providing excellent social care, welfare services, and financially through the Council Tax Support Scheme, where we will support around 30,000 households, the most vulnerable households and residents in the city. The budget proposals also continue our significant capital investment over the next 4 years. So for my portfolio, there are plans to place an investment of over £33 million on a range of capital schemes, and these will include investment in the council's estate, including replacement of the Coalfields Depot and continued energy efficiency works, smart city initiatives to deliver further fibre and 5G network infrastructure, through to further investment into the council's essential ICT infrastructure and equipment. Madam Mayor, for residents in this city, this budget is about protecting them, and it's about ensuring that during this ongoing cost of living crisis, that we can continue to do what we can as a council within the context of the ongoing austerity. With that, Madam Mayor, I would remind everybody that this council, Sunderland, will have the lowest council tax in the whole of the North East, and they should be praising us for that. We'll see their amendments later on. Okay. But more important, Madam Mayor, okay, as far as our residents are concerned, this budget includes continuation of free pest control. Durham, it's £44, Northumberland, £165. Wow. There we are. Free bins if they're stolen, Madam Mayor. Durham, it's £25, Northumberland, £39.50. And free bulky waste removal, Madam Mayor, free in Sunderland, Durham, £32. And Northumberland, wait for it, up to £79. So there we are. Madam Mayor, Labour keeps its promises and I endorse the budget.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, despite the continued national rise in need for services for children, 23-24 was a year of continued progress for children's services. Together for Children, our outstanding Ofsted-rated children's service, had 2 further successful inspection reports published, which point to continuous improvement. With a benchmark of an existing outstanding judgment, that provides significant assurance that the Council continues to strive for excellence in the difference it makes for families and children. Using our capital programme, we have expanded the number of our own children's homes by 46%, which means that Sunderland children get to stay in Sunderland, which is good for them, which is good for their families. This wise decision has given us some protection from the significant cost of external children's care, which profits from local authorities on a huge scale. Personally, I find that really offensive that children are used as a mechanism of driving profit. We are where we are, sadly. That's coupled with the continued success in reducing the number of cared for children, so we can now begin to see an improved budget position for the costs of this type of care. The strong foundation of early help services built over the last 6 years has given us an excellent platform to go ahead with our 5 family hubs, including a brand new family hub in Hendon with an official opening next month. Actually, this is my real area of passion and interest. I believe if you invest in early years, that transfers through. I've been involved in 1997 in an internal parenting group, which then went on to expand into children's centres. So it was really disappointing to me when the current government cut children's centres, and really frustrating that we couldn't offer that support. And as a governor in secondary schools, I do see the gaps that some of our children have because of missing those opportunities. So in May, I was really happy to go along to the opening of the new Hendon, Hendon, thank you, the Hendon Family Hub. And I did meet with Dame Andrea Leadsom, Tory, absolutely, and you can say that. My initial thoughts were absolutely that. But actually talking to her, she was driven by the same passion to invest in early years. And she was having quite a job in getting through to her own government and getting through to the Treasury that investment at this point is vital. So for all, I don't like her colours, I do like her as a person and absolutely appreciate what she's done to get this onto the agenda. It's our responsibility now to continue that and make sure we continue. So the hubs that we have are complemented by an extensive social media presence and an online booking platform, which takes the fear out of attending a hub for the first time. Once again, Sunderland is setting the standard for services to children and families. So great things can only be delivered if we have a workforce who are invested in our families and in our city. I really do want to commend and thank TFC staff across the continuum of services who help vulnerable families every day. As a result of their loyalty, we continue to have a permanent and stable workforce which protects us from the additional costs of agency social work, which, if you remember, a few years ago we were absolutely murdered with and are still crippling many other councils. Madam Mayor, turning to our schools budgets, which are predominantly funded by the Dedicated Schools Grant, we're affected by the same issues in our SEND provision as many councils across the country. Education, health and social care plans for children with disabilities have increased threefold over the last 3 years, and we have the highest rate of increase in plans for the under 5s population. We have continued to increase both the quantity and variety of local SEND places to ensure that the provision available for our young people is both appropriate and accessible, with new provisional developments across multiple areas in the city. Our Delivering Better Value programme, which is a national programme that we are taking part of, working through that programme, it's intended to alleviate the pressure on our high needs block funding. Part of that and underway with that through the Delivering Better Value programme, that absolutely raises the cost of home to school transport, which is increasing. That falls to our revenue budget and does remain an area of big pressure. During the recent bus strikes, we were paying an awful lot of money a day to transport people because they couldn't get buses. That's something you don't plan for, that's something that just arrives and you have to react to. You cannot let those young people not get to school. The council's invested in carbon reducing independence, creating initiatives for SEND transport, but as the number of children continue to increase, the challenge is becoming more and more significant. We do continue to lobby government for a fairer and affordable solution for SEND transport. So the councils continue to improve the condition of its maintained school estate to ensure our children have access to safe and secure buildings. Through the council's own capital programme, we've now delivered major schemes in Hetton, Barnes and Fulwell, and we continue to support all other maintained schools across the city to ensure our schools are able to deliver a high-quality curriculum. Finally, Madam Mayor, with this in mind, I would conclude by saying we will continue to address the budget pressures in children's services with discipline. That is going to be partly managed by developing early help, targeted and specialist services within TFC, which will help to reduce the need for high-cost interventions further down the line. On that basis, Madam Mayor, I commend the proposals from my portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As noted by the Leader and colleagues, as a council, we must continue with the delivery of our ambitious city plan. The city plan outlines our achievements on this journey to date and our significant ambitions moving forward. We recognise the need to grow to enable our city to become as self-sustainable as possible, and my portfolio plays a vital part in this through our regeneration and housing activity. I'm therefore delighted that the budget proposals within my portfolio continue our significant capital investment over the next 4 years, with plans in place to invest £437 million on a range of exciting schemes, with £215 million of that programmed in for 2024 to 2025. Looking around us today, this activity is very much underway, with the rapid development of Riverside Sunderland and across to the Sheepfolds, as the Leader has already said, and as demonstrated by the 2 rising buildings behind us here at City Hall. The private sector has very much come with us on this journey, and in addition there's a further planned investment in Sunnyside, with the Sunnyside Place strategy, developing new and better homes and providing new workspaces, having already invested in improving community safety in that location. Both investments will support regeneration in a key location in the city centre. The Council's capital investment will support the delivery of high-quality, energy-efficient, low-carbon and affordable new homes in sustainable communities. The driving ambition of the Council is bringing others with us through the levering of investment from central government, working with Redchester providers and private sector investors and developers. Jointly, we will drive new and improved homes across our city. And as the Leader has already mentioned, the new Housing Innovation, Construction and Skills Academy will enable our residents to develop the skills needed to equip them to access the skilled and well-paid jobs within our local economy. As a council, we continue to work closely with partners and investors to deliver on our aim of making Sunderland a dynamic city, providing better employment opportunities and an improved housing offer. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'd like to commend the budget proposals for the dynamic city portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Checker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, before turning to the detail within my own portfolio budget, can we first consider the national context regarding the ongoing funding issue within adult social care and public health? Whilst the additional investment made at Autumn Statement 2022 was very welcome, it is very disappointing and concerning that the 2024-25 local government finance settlement provides very little new investment for adult social care beyond that. People who draw on care and support will be understandably worried about the continuing impact of significant pressures on the service. Waiting lists across the country for care assessments or the provision of support remain stubbornly high, although thankfully not an issue for us in Sunderland. Serious recruitment and retention challenges continue to beset the workforce. Unmet and undermet need remains. Instability continues to characterise the provider sector, and directors of adult social services remain worried that their budgets are insufficient to meet all of their statutory duties. We also continue to call for long-term workforce plan for adult social care, equivalent to that for the NHS. Councils commission the majority of direct adult social care from external providers, and pressures on the frontline care workforce are acute, and challenges around recruitment and retention are well known. People are living longer, often with more complex needs, which is placing demand on pressures on all of our care services. Add to this the current inflation and pay pressures on ourselves and our providers, the funding system must be fixed. As if we needed reminding, our adult social care services have demonstrated their significant value, both through the pandemic and now as our vulnerable adults struggle with the cost of living crisis. We have continued to deliver excellent services through our own care and support company and through external care providers, the care services that some of our most vulnerable residents depend on. A long-term funding solution is urgently needed in order to ensure a sustainable, high-quality and sufficient care and health workforce to meet needs now and going forward. We're pleased to see the important role councils play in joining up our health and care services by supporting hospital discharges, as well as the focus on prevention and providing care and support to people in community settings. We will do everything we can to make this system work, but a sustainable long-term funding solution must be there to support us. Madam Mayor, the budget proposals outlined today for my Healthy City portfolio arise from work undertaken over many months to develop a service offer that meets assessed need in the most cost-effective way. As outlined by the leader, additional funding has been prioritised for adult social care within the Council's proposed revenue budget. This will support investment in services, help to meet the rising cost from demand, and seek to address the inflationary impact of services we secure from adult social care providers. The 2021 spending review committed to maintain the public health grant in real terms until 2024-25. Higher than expected inflation means it was actually lower in real terms in 22-23, continued to decrease in 23-24, and it will increase very slightly in real terms in 24-25. So the grant has actually reduced in real terms since 2021 and 2022 by 6%. We will, however, continue to provide public health services to support our vulnerable residents, to tackle the inequalities that have been clearly demonstrated and exacerbated by the pandemic, and to support our residents to live healthier lifestyles. We've secured significant national investment for our excellent drug and alcohol treatment and recovery, with over £2.6 million in 2024-2025. This is enabling us to offer support in a wide range of settings and to support more people through treatment and into sustainable recovery. Our budget proposals also include capital investment to improve our intermediate care service at Farnborough Court and investments into Barnes Park Cafe. In addition, there'll be further investment for disabled facilities grants, which pay for essential housing and adaptations to help people to stay in their own homes. Madam Mayor, as outlined in this speech, the financial position moving forward remains extremely challenging, but the proposals put forward today represent a balanced response to these in the current circumstances. And Madam Mayor, with that, I would like to commend the budget proposals for the Healthy City portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to present the report for the Vibrant City portfolio. Next year's budget proposals for this portfolio continue the work that has been developed to strengthen the cultural, sporting and special events offer available in our city, whilst operating in a severe financial position as previously outlined. 2023 saw such a magnificent range of events being delivered across the city, from food festivals to carnivals to Christmas events, the 10K and of course the World Championship Triathlon. We had remembrance services and many localised community events. We also continue to maximise our cultural offer across the city. Our museum and winter gardens continues to welcome thousands of visitors from across the city and beyond, with visitors numbers increasing again this year and work ongoing at the moment to redevelop the museum, this with the support of the National Lottery Heritage Fund. We're also investing in the Arts Centre Washington to improve the visitor experience. Of course, Sunderland Empire also continues to draw thousands of visitors, regionally and nationally, bringing West End shows to our city. In addition to this, of course, we now have the exciting and superb addition to our city of the Fire Station, a smaller theatre
which is becoming popular and, as attendance shows, quite unique. In total, the Council has facilitated over 70 events from January to December, which have had attendance of over 4,000 residents and visitors to our city. In 2024, we will continue to develop and announce more and new exciting events as soon as we can, providing entertainment and activities for all, whilst attracting residents and visitors to our city and supporting all the plans for our vibrant city ambitions. New events and ones we hope to bring in 2024 will build on the Sunderland Expo Come and Play. This was catering for youth 11 to 17-year-old, which was very popular, which took place just last week. This will be followed by a community growing festival in May and September with a focus on sustainability, biodiversity, growing and coming sea. Lots of summer events to explore the future and our homes. There will also be a month-long inclusive festival celebrating equality, diversity and community, planned to coincide in June with Pride Sunderland. We are continuing to work with community organisations across the city to develop Amelia for Sunderland and Summer Streets Festival held on Cliff Park in Roker. Of course, we're also looking forward to celebrating Washington's 60th birthday, as well as continuing to grow and develop the excellent existing Festival of Light. The support and development and enhancement of our much-loved community events will again be a strong theme within the programme of events moving forward. Dedicated event funding will be made available to area committees to match with a view of igniting locally produced events for local people in the area. At this point, I must commend our excellent officers who work so hard and diligently to deliver all these activities. It was crucial in 2023 that we adopted a new way of working to expand and reach all available resources. By collaborating with others, we engaged in co-production, joint marketing, event support, and of course a new grant scheme offering everyone to take part. The budget allows for a capital investment of over 55 million over the next 4 years. A significant part of this investment is the exciting development of Culture House. The scheme is now well underway, you may have seen just across the road, and it will be a fantastic addition to the city for residents and visitors alike. This 21st century cultural venue here in our city centre will attract residents and visitors throughout the year. It will transform our library offer to residents, bringing a whole new experience of libraries and local studies to Sunderland. It will encourage and enable creative engagement across our communities in a high-quality, family-friendly environment. We will ensure Sunderland continues to develop a cultural offer with something for everyone, with experiences and activities in venues across the city, ranging from music, heritage and arts. Madam Mayor has previously emphasised the financial position for councils across the country remains very challenging. However, we continue to work with our many partners, such as the Foundation of Light, Sunderland Bid, Sunderland Culture and many more. And this ensures we can bring a vibrant and inclusive cultural wellness offer across the city. I also refer to the superb work ongoing to meet our city plan objectives, to make our city a place of pride for our residents, to help more people become active, fit and participate in our communities. Also, despite savage government austerity measures, we still continue, wherever possible, to provide a full range of support, both financially and practical, to our most vulnerable families and residents, whilst assisting the community and encouraging cohesion during this cost of living crisis, which is affecting everyone that we seem to talk to these days. Of course, our Swim, Bike, Run campaign encourages and provides opportunities for residents of all ages and capabilities to get back into activities, which will improve their health, fitness and mental well-being. We continue to provide a range of facilities and opportunities for people to start, continue and enjoy, including the football hubs, refurbished tennis courts, our very popular leisure centres, and now play zones. A strategy that will focus on the most inactive people of our society who will improve their health. With that, Madam Mayor, I would like to commend the Vibrant City Portfolio budget.
Next, we will deal with amendments to the budget proposals that were moved by the Leader. Notice has been received of the proposed amendments and all Council members have been sent a copy. I would remind Council that a recorded vote will be taken on each amendment and then a single vote on the substantive motion. We will deal with the majority opposition group's amendment first. Councillor Mullen, will you please move the proposals in your group's amendment to the Revenue and Capital Budget by reading them out? And Councillor Reid, do you second the motion?
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move first the revenue and then the capital amendment. In relation to revenue, we are proposing to reallocate part of the neighbourhood budget to immediate priorities, totalling £1 million, a reduction in the corporate affairs and communications budget of £500,000, reduction in the events budget of £207,144, a reduction in the carbon budget of £944,000, cuts to councillors' allowances totalling £225,325, moving to a paperless model for agendas in the council magazine totalling £100,680, reducing the member support budget by £59,000, reducing the Japan and America international travel funding by £63,000, reducing trade union facility time by £120,000, revising the profit projection for the port by £50,000, ending the chauffeur-driven cars for the Mayor and Labour Cabinet, saving £42,190, and abolishing the Councillor's expenses budget totalling £35,000. That is then reinvested in a reduction in Labour's council tax increase totalling £1.2 million, returning free after three parking across the city centre totalling £90,000, introducing free after three parking at the seafront in Seaburn and Roker, which comes to £140,000, making all CPMS parking permits free, £122,220, implementing 10 school street schemes totalling £500,000, introducing 100 new bins across the city totalling £34,200, a Christmas tree in Roker totalling £15,070. It's not a ward I would laugh at. A citywide referendum totalling £380,000, 50 new civil enforcement officers totalling £548,265, 10 new grit bins totalling £5,010, an airshow sponsorship manager totalling £56,190, 3 park and cemetery enforcement wardens totalling £110,421, and an increase in spending on highways repairs, which is £125,657 being moved to the capital budget. In respect of capital, our proposals are, in terms of savings, to delete the remainder of the FPIT budget, totalling £4.3 million, reallocating the VAS budget to an anti-speeding infrastructure fund, saving £50,000, and subsequently spending that on traffic lights at the Ettrick Grove and Durham Road Junction, totalling £2 million, installing inclusive play equipment in Barnes Park, totalling £100,000, building a new play park at Howick Park, totalling £200,000, a road and pavement repair fund of £1.3 million, an anti-speeding infrastructure fund of £500,000, an upgrade...
Sorry, Councillor Mullen, just give me a second. Can we be quiet, please, while Councillor Mullen's speaking? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. replacing the railings and hanging baskets in Roker Avenue, totalling £137,350, and to develop and deliver on a commercial basis a padel tennis court at Silksworth Tennis Centre, costing no pounds.
Sorry, Councillor Reid, would you second the motion?
Yes, I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Mullen, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I begin on a slightly unrelated subject in saying that last week I was late to my first meeting of the Fire Authority because I was sitting crying in my car following the news of the death of Alan Wright, who was quite an incredible man. He was known to many of you. He liked to present himself as a political street fighter, but actually everybody who knew Alan liked him. He was my election agent twice, for which you might not forgive him, but he was a warm, community-orientated person who all of us on this side, and I think some on the other side of the chamber, found to be really quite incredible, and I will miss him enormously. Moving on to the budget, Madam Mayor, can I first of all thank Paul Wilson and Claire Emerson for their support with the construction of our budget amendment, and to welcome Claire to the Council. This budget amendment, in our opinion, reflects the priorities that local Conservative councillors have identified in speaking to the people of our city. It deals with parking and speeding problems in residential areas. It spends more on fixing roads and pavements. It offers a route to bringing back the air show, and it cuts costs for local people. Lower council tax, free CPMS permits, free parking in the city centre, and free parking at the seafront. The leader has today suggested that council tax rates are dictated by government, but of course he disproved this last year when he didn't increase council tax by the maximum amount and took credit at that time for setting a lower rate. But both of these things can't be true. Equally, the Cabinet Secretary went on to say that all parties have issued bankruptcy notices on behalf of their councils, but I would just add a footnote to that to say that only Labour councils have declared themselves bankrupt because of matters of corruption. The return of free parking in the city centre will not just help residents but local businesses as well. Recently, the Conservative group wrote to Marks & Spencer's head office to ask the store to remain in the city centre, including asking them to consider a new food hall brand. And in response to that letter, Marks & Spencer's has written back to say that one of the reasons that Sunderland city centre is not viable for business is because of the council's decision to remove free parking. Small and independent retailers have also warned of the same. The council's decision to scrap this scheme to save a mere £90,000 in the short term will have a consequential impact of lower business rate receipts in the longer term. And there is a wider point here as well, which is a theme continued in this budget today. The council purchased the M&S building in 2019 for £5 million, and since then it has not invested in or looked after that property. So either the council has made a poor business investment and neglected it, or the plan was always to force Marks & Spencer's out with a view to demolishing it. And perhaps when the leader stands up to respond, he can tell us which of the two it is. Having been successful in highlighting the need for traffic lights at the roundabout at the Broadway in previous years, I now draw Council's attention to the need for traffic lights at the Ettrick Grove-Durham Road junction. There have been at least 5 collisions at this site in recent years, which have required an ambulance and fire and rescue service to deal with the damage caused. Speeding is part of the problem, the visibility coming off the junction is part of the problem, and the congestion caused at the right-hand turn onto Ettrick Grove turns Durham Road into a single lane of traffic. Residents want it, and so we are offering it. The elimination of the cost of all CPMS permits is done on the basis of principle. Our residents in High Barnes and other residents across the city suffer as a consequence of hospital visitors being unwilling to pay to park in hospital grounds and therefore parking on residential streets instead. Residents didn't choose to charge the hospital for hospital car parking, and they shouldn't suffer as a result of that decision. The CPMS is born out of necessity to control the influx of parked cars in residential streets, but residents shouldn't then have to pay for the solution, especially when the council describes the charge as being solely for admin costs. Separately to that, we also want to move towards extended hours for the CPMS scheme. The current 2-hour windows don't work. They were designed to disrupt hospital staff shift patterns, but now we see parking at all times of the day. The exclusion needs to be extended to 24 hours. To pay for these and the other priorities, we've highlighted a package of revenue savings which eliminates wasteful spending, cuts councillors' allowances and redirects budget for neighbourhood spending directly into our neighbourhoods. Last year, to try to appease Councillor Stewart, who I am very fond of, we increased the carbon reduction budget to its highest ever level. But he still got us confused with the Lib Dems and called us climate deniers. So this year, we've used that fund instead to reduce council tax. And overall, we've highlighted things that our residents want. These are priorities dictated by the people we speak to in our wards, and though we as opposition groups don't get to set the budget, we can play a part in shaping the agenda and using this as an opportunity to put forward an alternative case for how we would like to see taxpayers' money spent. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Reid, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Yesterday evening, we held one of our regular ward surgeries in St Michael's ward, and we had a few residents, as we usually do, about the usuals, potholes and drains. But this one was unique in the sense it was the first time a resident ever broke down in tears to talk to me about an issue. She told me how her husband was incredibly sick and that on numerous occasions, ambulances and district nurses who have came out to see her husband had been verbally abused by people outside of her home. How in many cases, ambulances to come and see her husband had to park streets away because they couldn't get close enough for a quick, easy access. Now, of course, I'm here referring to school street parking, which has been a problem that I've raised on many meetings over many years, and this was a thing that Peter Wood had campaigned long before me. This lady's name is Jean, and she said to me these exact words, quote, "I feel powerless, like there's nothing I can do to help him," referring to her husband, who she fears, if the worst comes to worse and an ambulance can't get to her home in time, he may suffer a worse fate than simply being quite ill. So, what is it that we can do? And this is why in this amendment we've got school street schemes, because these roads are too narrow, they're too congested and they're too old for us to do anything else. There is no alternative in many of these streets because we've tried them all. The risk is too high for us to ignore. Even if this gets defeated tonight, I simply ask for everyone to take this away, that we need these school street schemes as an option across the city, not just in my ward, like in Newcastle, like in London, so that people like Jean and her husband don't have to face abuse from people who park over her own driveway, and so that people who need medical care from district nurses, from ambulances, can get it. But this speaks to a wider point about parking enforcement in residential streets, which I think needs to improve. Parking over dropped curbs is a common sight, which means that people who need to cross streets, if they're in wheelchair, need to struggle down an actual curb. Parking on full lines of path means that mothers with babies in pushchairs need to actually step into the road, step into traffic to get around and continue on their day. Most people see parking wardens as a sort of money-making exercise for the council, but they shouldn't see it like that. They should see it as a way to actually properly enforce the parking rules around schools and in residential areas, because far too many of our residents are taking abuse from people who park inconsiderately over their driveways, which is why we're allocating 15 more civic enforcement officers. And then, of course, we come back to free parking, a long-standing campaign. A policy that has priced so many residents out of the city centre that we now have, as Councillor Mullen outlined, Marks and Spencer saying to us directly that if they brought back free parking to the city centre, they would consider staying in Sunderland, which is a massive statement for a company to make. There is zero public support for bringing back parking charges. There is zero public support for it, none whatsoever. And at £90,000 to bring free parking back, that is less than some senior members of the staff made a year in the headline, which we saw many years ago. This council needs to choose if the pennies it brings in from parking is worth the damage it is clearly doing to the city centre, driving out businesses like Marks and Spencer's. And again, I recently spoke to a resident of a man called Jill who works in the city centre. She said to me that she often works late between 6 and 8 p.m. And in her words again, quote, "Those few free hours after 3 p.m. made all the difference." In fact, Jill told me that her eldest daughter has opted to work in the galleries instead of Sunderland because the first few hours of her work are for nothing because it goes straight to parking charges cost. If a resident was working the hours that Jill was working and spending that much money on parking charges, they would lose almost a quarter of their salary just to pay parking charges. People who want to park and work in the city centre like Jill are losing nearly £100 a week. That's not right. That's not right and that's not decent. And the people of Sunderland know that's not right. And the only way that we can ever actually invest in the city centre is if everyone takes pride in it. And if we're forcing people like Jill and her family out, forcing them to work in other places where they have free parking, then we'll never invest in the city centre in the way that we want to. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I've been advised that the following councillors wish to speak on the amendment. Councillors S. Johnson, Hartnack, Dunn, Peacock and Edgeworth. Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? If so, would members please indicate accordingly?
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Rowntree. Councillor Laws. Councillor Ty. So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are Councillors Johnston, Hartnack, Dunn, Peacock, Edgeworth, Stewart, Rowntree, Laws, Ty, and then the leader has the right of reply.
Councillor S. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is my third budget meeting and quite possibly the most important of all of them. This Labour budget shows no ambition for the city, and quite frankly, from the speech from the leader and his colleagues, the seafront is clearly an afterthought. My community, St Peter's, clearly an afterthought. Except it's worse than that. In the last couple of years, we've seen an attack from this Labour Council on St Peter's. Things have been taken away from us time and time again, and it has to stop. This amendment is an attempt to fight back against what this Labour Council is doing to St Peter's and to actually restore some pride to our area and give us what we deserve. So, let's start with Labour cutting events in St Peter's. The air show was cut, despite being very popular, for quite clearly false reasons which have been exposed in this chamber. For £56,000, we are proposing getting an airship sponsorship manager. That is not a lot of money, and yet it would have such an impact on the people in our area, the business in our areas, and the people from around the world who came to the air show. After the failure of the triathlon and the failure to put anything on this summer in St Peter's, I would counsel the Labour group to think about supporting this. Furthermore, our area has lost the illuminations. I am less against that than you might think, but we need to replace it with something. It's regularly said at North Area Committee, St Peter's is the one ward in the north not to have a Christmas tree. No longer. For £15,000, the people of St Peter's can have a Christmas tree in Roker Park, and it'll be wonderful. Not a lot of money, it'll be a lot better. You should back that as well. Moving on, we need a sense of place. People have to be proud of the area they live in. People in Roker are proud, and we have to help them to do that. So in Howick Park, we're proposing a new play area for £200,000. From speaking with my residents, their faces have lit up when they've heard we've done this. There are so many young families who want this, who need this. At the minute, they're walking all the way to Roker Park. Let's bring it local. Let's give them what they need. Furthermore, on Roker Avenue, we're installing planters, and we're also looking to get the railings replaced. That's a small step. We know more needs to be done on Roker Avenue. The issues historically have been well documented. But if the area, as it has been under this Labour Council, has been left to go to ruin, it'll never get any better. This is a start. We can do more, but this is a start. Moving now to parking. CPMS schemes. I have them in my ward, in the Marina, in Howick Park, and the planned expansion into Chiswick Estate. Residents are being ripped off at the minute to park outside their own home. It's not asking for a lot to be able to do that without paying exorbitant fees to this council. So again, back that. It'll help people in St Peters. 3 after 3, expanding at the seafront. I raised this to Councillor Johnson a long time ago, and it was told it was under review, and yet nothing happened. Instead, we scrapped it in the city centre. That has done untold harm to the city centre. In the seafront, we've never had the same luxury. Let's unleash the potential of our seafront by bringing in free parking. We have an excellent nighttime economy. Let's back it as a council at such a low cost. Finally on St Peters, on road safety, the anti-speeding infrastructure is massive. On Dame Dorothy Street, on Roker Avenue, on Whitburn Road, on Fulwell Road, across my ward, we have complaints about speeding that have been ignored time and time again by this authority. That has to stop. Let's put the money in place to install the measures while the residents are telling us they are needed. Finally, before I sit down, I'll mention padel tennis courts. James Doyle and I have had a passion for these for a very long time. And James is no longer here to fight the good fight, but I still am. Durham has just opened a massive padel tennis centre. It's packed every single night. James and I, unfortunately, have to travel all the way down to Teesside to play padel tennis when we want to. For zero cost, we can do this in Silksworth. Let's make it happen. Your budget hasn't worked. Niall wants it. Your budget hasn't worked. Back this amendment. Sort the area out. That's it from me. Thank you.
Point of order.
Councillor Hartnock.
Point of order.
Sorry,
Thank you. Under Rule 14.6, Madam Mayor, the Conservative group sat in silence whilst the Cabinet spoke. I could barely hear Councillor Johnson then because of the amount of talking on that side.
Councillor Hartnock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are two aspects of the Conservative alternative budget I wish to raise. One aspect being non-controversial, the second proposal quite controversial, but I'll raise it anyway. Fulwell's War Memorial is situated in Chichester Road. This is non-controversial, in Seaburn. And due to the lack of care by this council over many years, has become simply an eyesore, like so many other areas across our city. And this is simply not good enough for a symbol of remembrance to our glorious dead who sacrificed their lives for our freedom. On Remembrance Sunday last year, over 100 local people attended our service of remembrance and pledged their support for improvements to the memorial and its garden. We believe that Sunderland Council should bear the cost of renewal of the memorial site, which is estimated at around £50,000. And that's a mere fraction of the costs of the rather pointless removal of the F-pit wheel from Washington to Silksworth. Our second point requires some introduction. Along with all of my party colleagues on this side of the chamber, I am a proud and compassionate Conservative. We welcome the concept of diversity in our city, and we also take our responsibilities very seriously in respect of facilitating good community relations within the communities we serve. Sunderland for many years has been a welcoming place for those of different nationalities and religions to settle here. We've embraced a vibrant Jewish community, now sadly missed, and from the early 1970s, a large Bangladeshi community settled here following their own country's conflict with Pakistan, and they established a community which remains an integral part of our city. Conservative councillors remain proactive in listening to the public, and there is a huge groundswell of opinion on the doorstep across the city that Sunderland's City of Sanctuary status spoke on behalf of them without consulting them. The electorate are extremely vocal and are telling us that they feel this decision was made without their consent and that nobody is explaining what it means to them. We realise, of course, that many minority ethnic people, especially those from Nigeria, are legitimately working here or are university students. 3,400 plus their families this year alone have registered on courses with the university. But the biggest concern is not in respect of the number of Nigerian students, but the extent to which Sunderland is playing a major role in facilitating the acceptance of asylum seekers at a rate significantly higher than our neighbours in Durham, for example, who until recently had literally accepted no asylum seekers whatsoever. There are reasons for all of these changes, and this council knows the facts about immigration into our city. Yet when a member of the public submitted a legitimate question to council last month asking about immigration, the Labour response made an immediate accusation of racism instead of offering the transparent and factual answer that was deserved. We are being told on the doorstep that numbers are far too high, that Sunderland is accepting so many.
Councillor Hartnag, this is about the budget. So can we stick? Can we stick to that, please?
Madam Mayor, the Conservative group firmly believe that it is now time for the people to have their say through a referendum, which we have costed at £380,000.
Councillor Hartnag, can you stick to the budget, please?
It is linked to the budget. £380,000 spend. We recommend referendum to the public. Now, the Sunderland people are generally very welcoming and tolerant of diverse backgrounds, but the numbers of asylum seekers accepted into Sunderland
Councillor O'Brien, sit down. Councillor Hartnag, sit down. Sit down now. I won't say it again. I will not say it again. I will not say it again. Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My speech will be very brief and to the point. I'd like to talk on two items on the budget amendment around installing inclusive play equipment in Barnes Park and making CPS parking permits free. You might think that £100,000 for new inclusive play equipment for Barnes Park is only on this amendment for my own campaign purposes. Well, but ever since I became a councillor, I've been pushing for better parks for our children across the city, especially for those children with disabilities. If you look back to November 2022, I brought a motion to this council around making player parks across the city accessible for all. Everyone in this room agreed that we needed to do more and that our children with disabilities and their families deserve parks of which they could be proud of, which provide the same opportunities and experiences for those children without disabilities. You might also say, why Barnes Park for this equipment? Why not another park in the city or another park in the West area? The reason why Barnes Park, I feel, is the most appropriate place for this equipment to be installed is because the park is located so many SEN schools within the area. I know that schools access the park during the school week as part of their community engagement sessions, and that these young people also access the park with their families on a weekend too. I've had feedback from schools and local residents urging this to be made a priority for the park, and for that I agree also with that. For example, in the West area, there's no wheelchair swings at all that can be accessed by the public. So this allocation of money could be used to address that straight away. We have made some progress in developing our parks to be more accessible with the introduction of new accessible roundabouts and other smaller equipment. However, I think we could do more. Barnes Park gets so many visitors from not just our own city's residents, but from across the North East too. So let's make Barnes Park the leading park for families with children with disabilities, not for only our city, but for the country. A park which can be proud of, and that every child has the right to play with their peers and siblings. And the last thing I would like to talk about, Madam Mayor, is around making CPMS parking permits free for residents. I believe that residents in community park management schemes should not have to pay to park outside their own homes. They weren't the ones causing the issues, but are now expected to pick up the bill for this scheme, even though they were the victim of inconsiderate parking in the first place. The scheme has been positive for most residents and has made a difference for them. Before the introduction of the latest phase of the scheme, I had many residents contact me to say that people were parking outside their homes all day to access the hospital or the town to avoid paying parking charges. I had another resident contact me to say that the elderly parent was struggling to park outside their home and so they had to park at the top of the street, which caused further mobility issues. So the scheme has been positive in reducing these incidents. However, they now face another financial burden when it comes to paying for these permits. I acknowledge that the first permit is free. However, let's be real, most homes and families normally have 2 cars, like many of us in this room will have. So this will cost an extra £20. If any of our residents have a regular friend or relative that visits, they will need a permit for this, costing £40, or pay £10 for a scratch card permit. These sums of money may seem small, but they all add up. Even the charges to cars during that first, for the year when they've got the permit, brings an additional charge as well, which I believe is unfair, and I believe that most other colleagues in this room would agree with me too. So let's do the right thing. Let's end these costs for residents who need our support more than ever, and support this amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine is quite a brief speech. I'll try not to spend too long talking about the last 14 years of Conservative government, and I'll keep it on point. Once again, the Sunderland Conservative Group have presented a well-thought-out and costed budget amendment. It not only highlights several £1 million of savings from the Labour Group's spending, but also suggests spending in areas across the city which best fit the regular requests made by the public on the doorstep. I fully support all of the suggestions made within this Conservative budget amendment, but there are 2 particular areas I want to celebrate, as they're regularly highlighted in my ward of St Anne's. In addition to the £734,000 of funding allocated by our Conservative government to this council for pothole repairs in the past year, our group would pledge a further £125,657 contribution towards road and pavement repairs across the city. Last year, in my ward, I was contacted by a resident directly who asked for help with a dislodged curbstone in Pitcairn Road in Pennywell. The resident was upset because her elderly father had fallen into the road while out walking, and stated that the angle of the curbstone caused him to stumble, injuring his arm and head. I visited the location and discovered that there were several issues with paving and curbstones which had moved over time. And I reported this and returned at a later time to the location with an officer from the council to inspect the work necessary. I was advised that several of the potential trip hazards did not meet the minimum height to warrant repair work. After some discussion, it was agreed that the offending curbstone could be repaired, and thankfully this work was carried out efficiently by the highways team a few weeks later. However, a 5-minute walk around my ward, and I suspect everybody in this chamber could do it across their own ward, across the city, would highlight numerous similar situations with paving surfaces requiring attention. And for those less mobile, I can suggest a 5-minute drive in any direction will result in a bumpy ride over many potholes and cracked road surfaces, which we all experience on a daily basis. And that is exactly why the funding is required. It will be welcomed, particularly in the most neglected areas and well-travelled routes, and we simply cannot stand by whilst residents of this city risk slips, trips and falls on a daily basis due to insufficient funding allocation to the Highways Department. The second pledge I want to discuss, Madam Mayor, involves funding for the 3 additional park and cemetery enforcement wardens. We have across the city some wonderful recreational parks with tranquil cemeteries for quiet contemplation. But sadly, there are a minority of people that spoil these areas with antisocial behaviour, vandalism and littering, along with other illegal acts. In St Anne's, King George V's playing fields were recently identified by Northumbria Police as a hotspot for some of these activities. This resulted in enforcement wardings patrolling the area and challenging behaviour which were required. But, Madam Mayor, the current wardens seem to be stretched too thinly to make a significant impact across all areas. Residents have raised concerns about visiting parks in my ward, particularly with their young children, stating they're worried about the children coming into contact with broken glass, drug usage paraphernalia, large groups of teenagers and dogs running off the leash. Now, there are several ways to tackle these issues, but in my experience, one of the most effective has been the presence of our enforcement wardens. And therefore, any commitment to increasing the members of the team will receive my full approval, obviously. Both of these budget commitments are suggested not for political gain in the upcoming local and general elections, Madam Mayor, but to improve the local environment for our city's residents now and in the future. And I hope that members will give them their full consideration when casting their vote this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to talk about how a lot of the proposals in this amendment are worthy but a pale imitation of what's coming up in the Liberal Democrats amendment, and I was minded to support it, but I don't think we will be. Now, I think it's a shame for some sensible councillors like Greg Peacock, Richard Dunn and Sam Johnston, who made some reasonable proposals, but the Tories did vote for the motion they're talking about having a referendum on. They voted in favour of it, if I remember correctly, and people can have their say in May, and I, for one, can't wait for Miguel Smith to defeat Michael Hartnack at the elections in May.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's hard to know where to start with what's gone on over there in that sense. Climate change, I'll take the bait on that one. I'm not a climate change denier, but is what I seem to be hearing from over that in that side. What I would ask in relation to that proposal, and it's, you've deliberately linked it to council tax, so I'll come on to that as well, is that it reminds me of, I think it was a couple of years ago when I think it was the Lib Dems had that as an amendment. And you spoke up and was quite clear, and your party did indeed support the Lib Dem proposals, including the removal of the decarbonation fund, hence carbon change deniers. But at the time, you didn't do your homework, if you remember, and one of the projects that was linked to that budget was actually a project in one of the schools in your own ward. So what I would ask you is have you done your homework this year in relation to that fund? A smile on your face would suggest not. But it does include works with regards to schools in the city. And I would suggest perhaps that you might want to check to see if any of those schools in your ward are again, just in case. Okay. Madam Mayor, the proposals put by the Conservatives, other than the weird one about a referendum, I'm assuming that is to try and get the reform vote in me. I'm not quite sure. But it's generally the same old amendments that you get year in, year out. And, you know, I would hope at some point in time they actually, you know, think through and actually think of some new ideas. But the issue about council tax, you would believe that, you know, Sunderland was a high tax authority. And we've already shown that it's not a high tax authority. The high tax authority in the North East is Conservative Northumberland. And just to pull you up on a point, Councillor Mullen, about Section 114 notices and reference to those where it was budget and where it was those where it was unlawful. You should do your homework, because the Section 114 notice in Northumberland was to do with unlawful expenditure as well.
Corruption. Absolutely. That corruption was.
There we are, Councillor. Okay. But anyway, coming back to council tax, I would just like to remind the Conservative group that the Taxpayers Alliance, I love the Taxpayers Alliance. In fact, you know, I can't get off their website. They're full of wonderful information. And in June 2023, so it includes this year's council tax figures, they asked each local authority to provide details on their council tax. So it's the council tax as it stands at the moment, 23-24. And what they did is they produced a list of 297 local authorities. I didn't even know there was 297 local authorities in the country. And ranked them in relation to who cost the most, or who with regards to council tax, issued the largest bills to their residents and who issued the smallest. And shock horror, or at least horror as far as the Tory party is concerned, Sunderland is not in the top 10. No. In fact, it's not even in the top 100 highest tax authorities. In fact, on that list, if you actually look on their database, Sunderland came 270th out of 297.
Yeah, good job here.
And more horror, Tory Northumberland came 38th in their list, way up there. So, with regards to council tax, I think we look at actions, not words, and when Conservatives are in control, it means high tax. Okay. Councillor allowances. Okay. Again, it's the one that comes every year, and I was going to bring it up with you, but hey, I can't resist. Okay. It was this Labour group who put forward a proposal some years ago, I think it was about 3-4 years ago now, to actually cut the budget for council allowances by £140,000. Yeah. And you, both, well, actually not you, but your party, you had the opportunity to support that amendment, support that part of the budget, to actually reduce that council allowances, and you voted against. You voted against it at the time, as parties. And again, I would remind you is that the council allowances in Sunderland have never risen since
Councillor Stewart.
Move an extension, Madam
2 more
Mayor.
minutes, Madam Mayor. Okay, and I'll finish off with, I promise I'll finish off with council allowances. And that is, council allowances in Sunderland have been frozen since 2012. That's in real terms, if you take that into inflation, it means that council allowances have been cut by over 35%. Not by you, and certainly not by you either, but by this group here in control, to ensure that council allowances have not increased since 2010, unlike Tory Northumberland and unlike Lib Dem controlled Durham. No. Okay. In fact, coming back to them, okay, in relation to Taxpayers Alliance, who have the highest council allowances in the North East? Who do you think it's going to be? Number 1 is Northumberland. There we are. And number 2, Durham. I'll rest my case. Reject the amendments.
Councillor Rowntree.
I think, Madam Mayor, I'm going to have a bit of difficulty following that. It's interesting to hear Councillor Muntlin's somewhat parochial amendments to the budget. I think it's fair to describe. But yet again, the coalfields, completely invisible to the Tories. In fact, the only time we don't seem to be invisible is in by-elections, because that's the last time you set foot there. So it's interesting to hear that we're not even included in any consideration when you're thinking about this city. But yet again, Madam Mayor, the Tories show their lack of vision, ambition and aspiration for our city. We get the same thing year after year, and showing that they cannot take any fiscal responsibility for this city. Over the years, they've continued to slice back on this budget with no consideration to future investment or economic growth. If it had been took back their proposals over the years, Madam Mayor, we would have been bankrupt a very long time ago. So just to make a quick, brief point on climate change, we've got to acknowledge just how important this is, and especially to the children and young people of our city, because they tell us, Madam Mayor, how important the environment is to them. And we've got to protect the future of our children and young people in this city. We've got to make this a priority for them, and I would expect everybody in this chamber to see the future generations protected of our city, and I would expect that to be something all members shared, and if they did direct work with the young people and children in the city, they would know that. Yeah. So I would just like to finish with a quote that I've used before, and I would like to paraphrase. A society grows great when we plant trees whose shade we know we shall never sit in. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say, first of all, as the council that seconded the City of Sanctuary motion, that I'm proud that as a city we support people that require sanctuary, whether that's asylum seekers, those people who suffer from domestic abuse, whatever it is that people need sanctuary for, we as a city are proud that we will support them. Madam Mayor, I listened to what Councillor Mullin said, and I picked out one of the things that he said, which was listening to things that our residents want. I appreciate that Councillor Mullin won't necessarily have a massive amount of intel into what it is that residents in Washington want,
given that there are no Conservative councillors in Washington. I'm aware that obviously there was at one point until Councillor Donachie realised that the Conservative group have no real interest in Washington or its residents and defected. But I can tell Councillor Mullen what it is that residents in Washington want, and that's investment. That's what they want. They want to see investment into Washington, which is what this Labour group is doing. However, to look at the budget proposal from the Conservative group, in which they are proposing to cut £4.3 million out of Washington, I would say that our residents will be unhappy with that, but they've already got the measure of the Conservative group and don't bother to vote for them anyway. As an area committee chair for the last 9 months or so, I have spent a great deal of time meeting with people, the leader and cabinet secretary, city development directors, other directors, the BIC, the BID and many others, working to try and bring investment into Washington and to grow the place that we live for the residents that we serve. My area committee budget, our area committee budget, is about £430,000. The Conservative group want to cut 10 times that out of Washington. There isn't very much more that I need to really say to that, Madam Mayor, other than to pick up on one thing that Councillor Rowntree actually just mentioned, which is that the coalfield is invisible to the Tories. In some ways, I wish that Washington was invisible to the Tories so that they would stop trying to cut everything that we get out of it. That's all I have to say, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Tai.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Again, I'm going to have to jump about a bit based on the proposals by the Conservative Party, because in simple terms, there's more holes in that budget than a colander, and it's pretty hard to believe. There's one neighbouring ward, though, the ward I represent, that I just want to allude to. It's one of only a few Tory wards now that has 3 Tory councillors, and maybe that won't be for long if we get our way in May. And that's St Chad's ward. And I'm curious to see why there's no, I'll choose my words carefully, Madam Mayor, no rewards for the St Chad's ward for being loyal to the Conservatives for a significant amount of time. There's no Christmas tree for them, there's no path repairs, there's no war memorial going to be modernised, and there's a reason for that, Madam Mayor. And the reason for that, Madam Mayor, is the thought under the boundary proposals it was going to go to Silksworth. So they wouldn't possibly want to spend some money in another ward that's transferring. But I think the Boundary Commission's just threw a right old spanner in the works, because that's no longer coming to Silksworth, and you've just stuck 2 fingers up at the residents in Chad's and absolutely immensely helped our campaign. So I'm sure we'll make maximum publicity about that over the next few weeks. The other thing that absolutely bamboozles me is the proposal to reduce the neighbourhood fund by £100,000. The very neighbourhood fund that would have paid for, let's go down this list, Christmas tree in Roker, neighbourhood fund. I'm not going to even talk about the right-wing Tommy Robinson loving Councillor Hartnack along with Trust, to be fair, on that next one. Civil enforcement officers. We've just getting some of those in the West. What budget did that come from? A neighbourhood fund. Right, OK, we'll keep going then. New grit bins. Wow. I was starting to get the message. I don't need to go down this list totally now, do I? So you want to slash £100,000 out of a neighbourhood fund and then cherry-pick things and give them to wards where you've got a few councillors to try and retain them. Absolutely unbelievable. The people will see straight through that. You'll not get away with it. You'll not get away with it any longer, I should say. The one thing I want to end on, because I don't want to take too much more of your time, is it's to Councillor Reid, because what you said about Jean did touch my heart, and it would touch the heart of anybody in this chamber. But the one thing I would ask you, Councillor Reid, is were you honest with Jean? Did you tell her the chronic underfunding of the NHS for ambulance services and A&E and dealing with what they have to deal with, and queues of up to 18 hours for an ambulance, is the real reason an ambulance is not going to be parking outside of her house? Not because of parking, simply because of chronic underfunding. You've absolutely trashed this country.
Leader, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am staggered. Every year that we get to this exercise with the Conservative Party, I genuinely think the bar has gone as low as it can go the previous year. And every year, Councillor Hartnack surprises me by sliding under it again. Honestly, just terrible things to say. Some comments on some of the things that were said. Let's start with Councillor Johnston and how the triathlon was not a success. Well, I seem to remember standing next to you, Councillor Johnston, and Councillor Vera, watching the triathlon be a huge success, with loads of people enjoying the activity. World Series Triathlon saying, fantastic, we'd come back again next year if British Triathlon were prepared to deal with it and allow the council to try and work that out. So it was a huge success. Possibly you're alluding to something to do with a water issue, which was nothing to do with the council. And as was pointed out, was norovirus and nothing to do with the council and nothing to do with the triathlon. But never let the truth get in the way of a good story, Councillor Johnston. Your party for years didn't want the air show. Year after year after year, we stood here and listened to councillors from St Peters and from Fulwell saying, residents don't like it, if we don't want it, please take it away. So we took it away. And now, we want the air show. Honestly, the hypocrisy is staggering. You can almost taste it. It's that thick in the air. Right? As Councillor Tighe said, having a Christmas tree in Roker, and I think that's a great idea, genuinely, pay for it out in Neighbourhood Improvement Fund. It's what Washington does. Right? It's the same as Councillor Hartnack making the point about doing some work on the Fulwell War Memorial. Absolutely correct. Pay for it out of your Neighbourhood Improvement Fund. That's why there's roughly £2.5 million set out to the 5 areas committees every year, so that they've got the money to do these projects which are specific towards allowing councillors to be ward leaders and deliver what residents are asking for them to do. Now, everybody else seems to be doing it. Are you just here moaning? Is that all this is about? Because I look at this scurrilous amendment to the budget, which is clearly just about transferring money into Conservative wards in the city centre in a desperate attempt to stave off impending doom at the local elections, where you're getting absolutely battered, by the way, and in the general election that will follow. Right? Just Barnes, St Peters, Barnes. Honestly, you'd think people were worried that they might get beaten me. Moving that expenditure and investment solely into wards is very poor politics, Councillor Mullen, and as members over here have already said, it's as transparent as the glass in this building, and residents will see it for what it is. On a serious note, Councillor Reid, hope you're listening. I'm going to give you a chance to withdraw your comments about Marks and Spencer's, because I'm very tempted to call you a liar, but because I'm a gentleman, I'm going to just say that the level of misinformation that you've put out about it is staggering. Right? If there's a letter, I've not seen it. If there's a letter, I've not seen it. As far as I'm aware, no officer in the council has seen it, so can we see the letter? Right? And let's have a meeting with the CEO of Marks and Spencer's, shall we? And let him tell what it is, because I know exactly why Marks and Spencer's moved out of Sunderland, and the council didn't want it to happen, but it's their business decision. So what you said's a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. And I look forward to getting a copy of your letter after this meeting, because I'm going to take that further. I'm not happy with what you said there at all. The neighbourhood budget, taking £1 million out of it, is just denying. You're just denying your residents the ability to tell councillors who are their champions, this is what we need, can we do it, please? So clearly the Tories do not care about their residents. It's all about political posturing and statements. The reduction in the corporate affairs and communications budget is purely an attempt to stop the council telling residents that we asked, you said, We did. Are you happy with it? Which, over the last 5 years, has worked very well. Because residents are now seeing that the council is delivering. Oh, I will stop, Madam Mayor. There's so much I could say here, but obviously against the Conservative amendment.
Mayor Sunderland.
Yes, Councillor.
May I raise a point of order, please? Under the Equalities Act 2010, I've just cooled down from listening to Michael Hartnack try to drag this city's reputation through the mire. This council, like all local authorities, has a duty under the 2010 Equalities Act to protect the 9 protected characteristics: age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage status, pregnancy, race, religion, sex and sexual orientation. You will find that almost without exception, anybody who is a seeker of sanctuary meets at least one of those requirements, if not several. That's why I actually think I'm so concerned about, we had no idea what we were voting on until we were sat here, but I'm so concerned about what councillors are being asked to vote on in this meeting that I'd like to ask that the motion, the Conservative amendment is rejected. The Chief Executive, I believe, has the right to do that under Rule 12.3 of the Council Procedure Rules, which reads that, and this could be a set of adjectives used to describe Michael Hartnack, actually. Yes. The Chief Executive may reject the motion on the grounds that it is potentially defamatory, without question, vexatious, without question, frivolous, well, I mean, that's the man in one word, offensive. Yes. It's his middle name. But then beyond that, is in some other respect, this is part F, is in some other respect considered to be out of order, yeah. Illegal, yeah. Very possibly, irregular, without question, improper, yes. Yes. Mayor Sunderland, I don't think we should be voting on this. I think it should be withdrawn. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
In consultation with the Chief Executive, we are taking out item 8, the citywide referendum. We will vote on the rest of the amendment.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under the same rule, I would simply point out that in addition to not actually allowing Michael Hartnack to finish what he was saying and arguing that it wasn't a budget item, which it clearly was, given that you have removed it, the council doesn't have to be bound by the outcome of a referendum. The narrative within the budget amendment doesn't specify what it is. If the budget is allocated, the Labour group controls the council, they could put a different question on the ballot. We couldn't add into the narrative what it was on. Michael was specifying what we would use it for, but it's not specified within the narrative of the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Mullen, but we're moving on to the vote.
So Madam Mayor, if the officer could please start the vote, which is on the amendment, but without the particular provision that the Mayor has just highlighted. And also if we could have the division bell rung in the lobby, please. So members should be able to vote now.
Oh, I'm back. I did not have been away.
So members, the vote is about to close. And if we could close the vote on the amendment, please. So there are 21 votes in favour, no abstentions, 44 votes against, so the amendment is defeated.
Thank you. Can we move on to Amendment 2, please? Councillor Edgeworth, will you please move the amendment to the Revenue and Capital Budget by reading it out?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is how you do an opposition amendment. So, revenue savings, reduction in support costs for area committees linked to reduction from 5 to 3 for £100,000, a reduction in the number of area committees and saving of chairs and vice chairs, £33,254, a reduction in special responsibility allowances and councillor expenses in line with the Liberal Democrat submission to the Independent Remuneration Panel, which includes a 5% reduction in basic allowance, a 20% reduction to leader, deputy leader, cabinet secretary and cabinet member SRAs, and then adjusted for political control, a reduction in the leader of the majority party opposition as a result, and a subsequent change to the leader of the minority party in opposition's special responsibility allowance as a result, abolish SRAs for deputy cabinet members, reduce SRA for chair of scrutiny coordinating committee to £4,143, reduce SRAs for chairs of area committees to £8,280, reduce SRAs for chairs of thematic scrutiny committees, planning and highways committee and licensing and regulatory committee by 20%, reduce the SRA for the Audit and Governance Committee and independent members by 20%, abolish the positions of Mayor and Deputy Mayor, apologies, Madam Mayor, and replace with unpaid elected chairperson, change travel allowance policy so expenses can only be claimed when travelling outside the North East region, abolish all provision for subsistence and abolish all provision for reimbursement of broadband and telephone costs, which is £254,467, removal of the corporate communications budget, including retainers with Creo Communications and Different Narrative for £1,143,500, scrap the resident survey newsletter, £113,370, our old favourite, remove the budget for carbon reduction, £944,000, additional day off for staff not applied to Chief Officer Group and Assistant Directors at £0, end the spending on existing tobacco control and alcohol denormalisation programmes delivered by Balance North East when their existing contract expires on the 30th of September, and reallocate spending towards an assistance programme to be made available free of charge for residents and employees of small and medium-sized businesses in the council area. This assistance programme must provide for free counselling sessions, life event support, addiction support, quitting and reduction advice and healthy lifestyle support, introduction of a full paperless system for meeting agendas and documents unless there's any accessibility issues, £18,000, end the use of council vehicles to travel for the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Cabinet members and councillors, £42,190, scrap the Mayor's hospitality budget, £3,835, scrap the foreign travel budget and prohibit internal flights for council staff and elected members when travelling within the United Kingdom, except for business travel to and from the north of Ireland for £29,519, end free parking for councillors at St Mary's Car Park, £8,500, stop all funding and sponsorship for awards ceremonies hosted and attended by the council, £49,250, and cancel a range of subscriptions for membership organisations for £56,258. And move on to our revenue spending, which is to reduce council tax increase by 1.6%, make permanent additional environmental services staff employed by the area committees for £250,000, allocate a further £184,035 for 5 additional dog wardens, reverse £184,035, reverse any planned increase in allotment rent charges, £7,615, free second permit for residents in CPMS areas, £21,800, create a new bigger wheelie bin fund to assess households who need a 360-litre bin, £8,087, reverse the 24-25 increase in brown bin charges for £88,575, extend the brown bin collection by an additional 2 collections per year for £79,079, reinstate free after 3 parking in the car parks it applied to for £90,000 and to extend it to the Riverside multi-storey for £8,100, hold a school streets trial at Highfield Academy for £35,000 and hire 2 full-time traffic wardens dedicated solely to enforcement of issues along Durham, Chester and Hilton roads and neighbouring streets for £73,102. And moving on to our capital amendment, we are reallocating the Washington F-pit, scrap uncommitted budget associated with the provision of new city boundary signs and reallocation of the residual strategic acquisitions budget totalling £4,490,000. And our spending proposals are an additional investment in highways maintenance budget to repair roads and footpaths for £1,230,655, a feasibility study into the acquisition of a public park in the Ford of Pennywell area for £10,000, a feasibility study into establishing a programme of creating dog parks at sites across Sunderland, Houghton and Washington for £30,000, feasibility study into council supporting development of local supermarket in Hendon for £600,000, a camera for the school streets trial at Highfield Academy for £15,000, propose acquiring and redeveloping vacant Weir Tavern building in Pallion.
Councillor Edgeworth, just give me a minute, would you please?
Yes.
Could I ask everyone to be quiet when a councillor is up speaking? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be as quick as I can. Weir Tavern acquisition, £916,345. Installation of a pedestrian crossing at Hastings Hill Roundabout, £750,000. Installation of a new bus shelter at Phoenix Road Bus Terminus in Pennywell, £10,000. Installation of a permanent enforcement camera to prevent and issue fines for illegal parking on Ebden Lane in Fulwell, £28,000. Convert the existing Stedborough crossing outside Seaburn Metro to a full Pelican crossing, £100,000. Install a pelican crossing adjacent to 3 Whitburn Bents Road, 110,000. A pelican crossing at Front Road, Fordfield Road, 100,000. Install pelican crossing at Springwell Road near Springwell Medical Centre, 200,000. Physical barriers across one of the 2 lanes at the junction of Derby Street and Tunstall Road for £30,000. A pelican crossing on Tunstall Road near the junction with Tunstall Terrace, £125,000. 2 chicanes on Westmoor Road in Pallion, £45,000. 2 on Midmoor Road, £45,000. 2 on Grey Road, £45,000. And narrow Durham Road to 1 lane between junctions with Elwyn Terrace and Beechwood Street to prevent speeding for £100,000. Thank you.
Councillor Fagan, do you wish to second the motion?
Madam Mayor, can I make a point of... It's a point of order.
Leader.
Right, can I see that message, please? Still aware of what Sunderland Conservatives are posting all over Facebook. Sunderland Conservatives, the people of Sunderland need to have their say. They need to have your say on what happens in your city. That's why we're putting forward plans to hold a referendum on if Sunderland should remain a sanctuary city. Disgraceful. A public referendum on Sunderland should be a sanctuary city. You know bloody well we're not a sanctuary city. We are a city of sanctuary. It's entirely different, and this is playing to the worst sort of politics.
Absolutely.
And that's why your referendum item was withdrawn, thankfully, by the Chief Executive. And you've posted that anyway, knowing full well it's inflammatory and it's almost certainly, you can call it racist. It's an absolute disgrace. And all the Conservative councillors here should hang their head in shame. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, just briefly on that point, I would like to make explicit that only the last full council, Councillor Johnson, clarified that for you. You were in that council. He told you and explained that your conflation of sanctuary city over city of sanctuary was wrong. You're actively misleading people about the status of this city, and it's utterly shameful.
Moving on, Councillor Edgeworth. Are we finished? Moving on, Councillor Edgeworth, would you like to speak on your amendment?
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking Paul Wilson and Claire Emerson for all their help when Heather and I took over. As leader and deputy leader, Niall Hudson-Martin as well did say how good the finance team are, and they certainly are, and had a lot of patience and time for us, so we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to Graham Miller, who every year says, why have you put this in a budget amendment? You should come and see us if you want to get stuff done. So I went to see him. And for many years, our budget amendments have had modest proposals to give free visitor parking permits to carless households in those zones. It has been unfair that those households with a car got a free permit for their vehicle, but carless households had to pay if they have people they rely on to drop in shopping off or for care and responsibilities. And that was more expensive than a second car permit. So this penalised people who chose not to have a car or who needed someone with a car to help them. So thanks to Graham Miller and Paul Wilson, I understand that this is now in the pipeline. So thank you very much for that. We've also included historically no-cost items on auto-renewal for parking permits and brown bin sign-ups. And again, thanks to Graham Miller and Paul Wilson for their help in making sure that those are now being taken forward too. So thank you very much for that. We're very grateful to the leader for listening and working constructively with us, and these things will make a difference to residents, which is what it's all about. So despite those very welcome changes, I'm grateful for the opportunity to set out what Liberal Democrats would do if we were in the council. This is a balanced and sensible amendment, delivering common sense changes to the council's budget based on the priorities of the people that we were elected to serve. We are proposing drastic cuts in the cost of doing politics in the city, including cutting councillor allowances, axing all expenses, and ending the completely unjustifiable perks to councillors like free parking in St Mary's. We've always said that the council and councillors need to share the burden of the cuts, and we continue to believe that. We also want to slash the taxpayer-funded propaganda magazine and the annual residence survey, which only tells us what any councillor worth their salt already knows from speaking to residents. And also we want to slash the corporate communications budget. Things outlined in this amendment, like cleaner streets and properly maintained roads, would be a much better advertisement for the city and for the council than anything we pay comms agencies to say. We aside Liberal Democrats don't employ any corporate communication staff, and we still manage to get excellent coverage for our campaigns and messages in the local press and media. So it can be done without a huge price tag. And with these savings, we're prioritising improving basic services for residents and getting a fairer deal for local people. That includes more environment and antisocial behaviour officers, more dog wardens, more bigger wheelie bins, extra brown bin collection throughout the year for a lower price, more traffic wardens, particularly to deal with the problems on Durham, Chester and Hilton roads, cheaper allotment charges, free permits for second cars in parking permit areas, and of course we're doing the right thing for local people, independent businesses in our city centre economy by bringing back the 3 after 3 to St Mary's Sunnyside and extending it to the new Riverside car park too. We've also prioritised limiting council tax rises for hard-working people across the city, reducing Labour's council tax hike by 1.6%, far more than the Conservatives, coming to a Fulwell focus near you very soon. Our capital spending is also focused on priorities for people in our areas who elected us, fixing more roads and pavements, tackling speeding in our communities, allowing people to cross busy roads safely outside Springwell Medical Centre, at the Hastings Hill roundabout on Tunstall Road near the Ivy House, outside Seaburn Metro and outside the Bay Fish and Chip Shop on Whitburn Bents Road, all places where the council hasn't yet agreed with us that action needs to be taken on these busy arterial roads. And we're also giving Labour colleagues another chance to do the right thing by voting for our plans to finally sort out the eyesore Weir Tavern in Pallion and to support our plans to bring a supermarket to Hendon. So I'm sure everyone in the chamber from all sides will agree with this sensible and common sense amendment, which will deliver things that local people have been asking us as councillors to deliver. So I hope we have your support. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fagan, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just keep it quite brief because I think Paul's covered quite a lot of it already. The Lib Dem budget takes a sensible approach to cost cutting during these testing times. Of course, it's got to be acknowledged that the Tory government is squeezing local councils to the point of no return. Therefore, tough decisions need to be made, decisions that will no doubt impact our residents. However, there are opportunities to cut some unnecessary spending within the council. The budget asks councillors to take on some of the burden by reducing allowances and SRAs, insisting Labour councillors pay for their parking like other city centre workers, and asking Graham Miller to find his own way to the footy match instead of using the mayor's chauffeur-driven car. Our budget would recruit environmental services staff with along with dog wardens and support residents to manage their waste better. These steps would in turn make the city a cleaner and greenest place to be. As mentioned, we would introduce the 3 after 3 scheme for the city centre car parks, not just to help out residents, but the businesses who are already feeling the negative impact of the council scrapping this offer. We need to do everything we can to help keep these businesses afloat, and our budget would do that. Now's the time to cut back on the nice to have in order to minimise the impact of council tax rises on residents who are already struggling to make ends meet. We cannot waste money on or fritter it away on non-essential expenditure. Our budget deals with the basics of improving the roads by filling in more potholes and carrying out resurfacing, installing safer crossing points and tackling parking problems. The Lib Dem budget addresses the issues that people tell us they want sorting and slashes wasteful spending. Thank you.
I've been advised that the following councillors wish to speak on the amendment. Councillors Crosby, O'Brien, Hodson and Mullen. Does anyone else wish to speak? If so, would members please indicate accordingly?
Councillor Laws. Councillor Stewart. So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are Councillors Crosby, O'Brien, Hodson, Mullen, Laws, Stewart, and the Leader has the right of reply.
Councillor Crosby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I stand before you today to appeal for a crucial change to our revenue budget that impacts the safety and well-being of countless women workers in our community. The issue at hand is the pricing structure of our council car parks, particularly the decision to eliminate free after 3 p.m. parking in central car parks like St Mary's car park, a safe and secure space with a very low crime rate and excellent CCTV coverage, and with a member of staff in attendance. As we all know, safety should be a top priority for any community. For many women, especially those who work late hours, having access to a secure parking space is not just a convenience but a necessity for their peace of mind. By reinstating the free after 3 policy, we are not only providing a practical solution, but also demonstrating our commitment to ensuring the safety of all members of our community. Research consistently shows that women are disproportionately affected by safety concerns, particularly in public spaces during nighttime hours. By making it easier and more affordable for women to park in a secure location, we are taking a proactive step towards addressing this issue and creating a more inclusive and equitable environment for all, particularly low-paid service and hospitality staff working in the city in the evening. The Council suggests alternatives on its website for the to the paid car parking in the centre of the city, but how safe are they? These are the police crime statistics for the location of these car parks in 2023. Gorse Road car park, there was 1 instance of vehicle crime and 3 sexual assaults. West Weir Street, 1 sexual assault, 1 incident of antisocial behaviour, 1 incident of a public order offence and 4 drug offences. Charles Street car park, 13 antisocial behaviour incidents, 1 vehicle theft, 1 bicycle stolen and 2 sexual assaults. Tatum Street car park, 3 antisocial behaviour incidents, 1 public order offence and 2 sexual assaults. This budget amendment would not only benefit women workers but also contribute to the overall vitality of our local economy. When people feel safe and secure, they are more likely to patronise local businesses and contribute to the growth and prosperity of our community. And the cost of making women customers and hospitality businesses and low-paid workers feel safe and secure, £90,000 in our budget. I urge the Council to reconsider its decision and reinstate the free after 3 parking policy in our council car park by voting for our amendment. Let us send a clear message that the safety and well-being of our citizens, especially our women workers, are paramount. Together we can create a community where everyone feels safe. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As our resident eco-warrior, it's up to me to explain why we want to reduce the budget of the carbon reduction renewal, as Sir Keir Starmer himself says in his latest round of flip-flops, when he has reneged on his own carbon reduction and environmental pledges. I think it's right to do so in a time of crises. And at this point in time, there's pretty much of a cost of living crisis still. We're still looking at people choosing to pay their council tax or to eat. And I'm not here to virtue signal, but remind me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I think I got on the Lumo train, which is completely electric, and Graham flew with Logan Air at great carbon expense to the LGA conference. It was also very nice to have dinner with you, Graham. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to have dinner with you. For that reason, I think it's just pertinent to delete that item at the moment, and we can always revisit it in a number of years. But I know that Sean is about to speak, but I'm going to preempt him on that because he's probably going to mention the FPIP. Probably, but to my joy, I can announce that we will be instituting a dog park in Washington, which is a much needed infrastructure in Washington. I hear. Also, I will just on it. I can't even keep. Washington Steve actually told us that. Yeah. Quite right now. I can't even keep a straight face. I hate dogs. They don't. I keep getting bit. But on a positive, to end this thing on a positive note, because it's been dreadful, brought down by the Conservatives. I'd like to thank Graham actually myself, because we've been on here for a very long time now. It's nearly a decade. God help us all with that. I got on this council when I was 26. I'm now 33. But previous leaders were not as constructive as Graham. I thank him for that, because he did do what he promised. He did say that if one of us came and seen him, he would try and work with us. So thanks for that. And hopefully, Graham, next time I say at the LGA, probably this year, you won't be flying, because there's only in Harrogate, and we can probably get the train together.
Councillor Hodson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor of Sunderland. There is plenty of good news in the budget, and I would like to echo what my colleague Paul said about some of the changes to auto renewal for parking permits and free visitor permits in carless households. It's clear I can now see the advantage of the massive leftward lurch this party's leadership has taken. It was obvious that's the difference, but at least it has a positive side, if not for me. But there's also good news on the Riverside development. I think the leader and various members of the cabinet hinted at that. I would point out, though, that when it comes to the carbon footprint, there is on page 82 of our budget pack the words that will reconfigure St Mary's Boulevard. We only just built it. We built this massive dual carriageway through the city centre. We're now going to reconfigure it. That has quite a large carbon footprint, and actually probably a far larger one than the amount we're proposing to reallocate in our budget. I also don't want to forget the investment in the museum. I think maybe John Price mentioned that. It is actually fantastic, and I have repeatedly stood at these budget meetings and said how well our museum and Winter Gardens is continuing to do on an absolute shoestring. The fact that it's attracted external grant funding and is still going through redevelopment is really important. Despite the fact that we've got this new city centre development, a new culture house, we can't forget about other areas of our civic infrastructure around the city. That's why the improvements to the elephant tea rooms and the Winter Gardens are absolutely fantastic, and I applaud what the council is doing. But there are other problem locations when you go just that little bit further out from the city centre, which is why the Weir Tavern appears on our budget amendment for the second year running. We want to take real action to fix this. It has had too many false dawns. The residents who live in Pally and Millfield are absolutely sick of it. Now, I usually love for focus leaflets standing and pointing with a sad face at a pothole or a damaged building, but I think to do so, to stand in front of the Weir Tavern and get your photograph taken in this situation would just be really poor, and actually not be taking real action to fix it. We're putting money where our mouth is on this one. Likewise, one of the things across the city, and one of the things Graham quite rightly criticised some of the earlier opposition amendments for things that could have been funded by the Neighbourhood Fund. Actually, lots of the localised developments we are proposing in our budget are a bit more expensive than that. And I also think when Paul was reading through them, you can hear that they're things that actually benefit, they're citywide benefits. They benefit the city centre, the seafront. There are thousands and thousands of people who would benefit from taking these actions. They're not exactly localised to sort of tiny communities or putting grip bins in a single area. That's why in introducing traffic wardens to finally tackle the problem of pavement parking, double yellow line parking and dangerous parking on our urban shopping streets of Durham Road, Hilton Road and Chester Road is long overdue. We've been trying to work with the council leadership to deal with this over the past few years. It's a problem that is only getting worse and getting more dangerous. It's clear that that department is understaffed, and that funding would go a long way to improving life for pedestrians and businesses in those areas. Likewise, there is, and everybody knows this, we've spoken about it before, a real increasing problem and danger of speeding and dangerous driving around the city centre that's making it more and more dangerous for pedestrians living in central Sunderland. A number of our amendments are to introduce safer crossings and pathways for pedestrians around the city. I think we do have a duty to do this because the statistics of accidents in the city are increasing, and it is alarming. In that sense, I'm really glad to see that our budget makes specific mention of narrowing Durham Road near Burn Park, introducing a crossing on Tunster Road where you have a number of schools, and we are still failing to provide a regular crossing patrol service, and also at Derby Street, a one-way junction that is frequently being abused. So I think there's a number of really positive, sensible developments in this budget, and I really hope it will get cross-party support. Thank you.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This does feel a bit like the Diet Tory option in that a lot of these proposed savings are the same ones, but with more words added to the description of what they are. But it manages to combine that with a kind of Soviet central planning vibe in that it's extreme in its specificity of where specific erections in the city will go on which roads at which point. And in ours, we suggested a more broad anti-speeding infrastructure pot, which would be more flexible across the city rather than outlining on a map where every single bollard is going to stand. Also slightly confused as to why you would remove the cost for one additional CPMS permit when the option is there to get rid of the cost for all of them on the basis of the principle that I outlined earlier, but I still think that one additional free one is better than nothing. And equally agree with what Councillor Crosby said about the need for the free parking in the city centre. I think we are of a single mind on that and its importance to shopping and the retail offer in the city centre. I did find myself quite amused with reference to not paying for internal flights to the north of Ireland, which I think must refer to Knock Airport in County Mayo, because it couldn't possibly be a disparaging reference to Northern Ireland, which is a part of the United Kingdom and called Northern Ireland. I'd be interested, though, genuinely interested, to hear more from Paul Edgeworth on his thinking about some of these networks that he's referred to. I've never heard of some of them, and if he can talk about those, it will be useful. And equally, I'd like to know more about the defunding the alcohol normalisation programme, perhaps something that he and I can pick up the next time the Campaign for Real Ale hosts an event at Conservative Party conference. Overall, as I said, this feels very much like a diluted version of the Conservative budget, but we are happy to support it.
Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to Councillor Mullen for his latest Benny Hill routine, where he takes an opportunity to talk about erections for some reason. I can confirm, Stephen, yes, I am going to talk about the FPIT. I would quite happily not have to stand up in these meetings and talk about the FPIT. We intend to spend the money to invest in Washington. It's other groups that are making me having to stand up and do this. Councillor Hodgson mentioned that we can't forget about areas outside of the city centre. And again, I'll go back to, I hope in future budgets, the Lib Dems do forget about Washington, because again, the only thing that the Lib Dem group are doing is cutting in Washington. Heather Fagan talked about a sensible approach to cost cutting, which again impacts Washington. The only thing that Washington gets from either the Lib Dems or the Conservatives is cuts. We will be investing £4.3 million into Washington. It's been said before that I love the FPIT. Well, I can tell you what I do love is investment into Washington, because I know that that investment into Washington will bring further investment into Washington, and what it will do is it will mean that that is how we follow that on with improvements to our infrastructure. That is what residents want in Washington. That's what it's going to bring in. There's not much more I need to say other than take what I said for the previous group, remove Conservative, add Lib Dem. They're doing exactly the same things as each other and cutting in from Washington. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was intending to introduce my comments by saying there's not much difference with regards to the Lib Dems and Tories, but perhaps if Michael, if you moved over there a little bit, it might be still true enough, in the sense that if you look at particularly the cuts in that sense proposed by the Lib Dems and the cuts proposed by the Tories, there ain't much difference there really. They're all in the same things. They're all talking about attacking area committees, all part of their centralisation plans. You mentioned Stalin, where they go on in that sense. But and it's all to do about pet councillor projects. You know, they look towards eliminating the council's communication budget to stop us actually talking to residents. Clearly, they don't like us talking to residents. Again, it's to pay for pet councillor projects, and then I couldn't resist. Come on to the carbon fund, shall we? Good. Okay. You know, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's usually a duck. Madam, I think we're in a position where we've all accepted there's a climate emergency, sort of a bit of a clue in that emergency, that we need to do things to try and resolve the climate issues. And what you want to do is to take the funding away that actually will help this city achieve its aims to become carbon neutral by 2030. Now, you can continue to say that you're not climate change deniers, but if you keep coming back and trying to deny the council
Madam Mayor.
Deny the council the tools to be...
Just a moment, Councillor Stewart.
Point of personal clarification.
Councillor O'Brien.
I'm not a climate denier. I simply am following the example of Sir Keir Starmer, where he said that where it is a time of crises, priorities change. The change in priorities is to try to keep people's food on the table rather than paying for more expensive politicians and political prizes for your own party. If you want to have a go at us for being climate deniers, maybe don't travel on a plane to Bournemouth and get the Lumo, and it's only £19 return.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking at this, and it's £916,345 with regards to the vacant Weir Tavern. What the hell's that got to do with the issue that you've just mentioned there? Actually, so what you're saying is...
Councillor Bryan, you've had your say.
I haven't got me... So you didn't hear anything I said, did you? I'll start again, shall I? Right you are. Okay, the Weir Tavern. Yes. 916,000. Well, hey ho. If we remove that, because I don't think that's got anything to do with the issue of the crisis that we're in with regards to residents and their needs. That in itself would go a long way to ensuring that the carbon fund could be put in place and maintained. So what you're saying, Councillor O'Brien, is absolute rubbish. And it's also the fact that if you were correct, why did you have this? Why did you have it last year and the year before and the year before? Okay. Do you just keep changing the reason and the rationale when the reality is because you carbon change deniers? There we are. Convince me otherwise. Okay, enough about the carbon fund, I think. I even brought my pound, hoping you were going to increase it by £1, but never mind. Okay, looking at some of the other issues that you've raised there, things that stick out are the removal of the additional day's annual leave from the chief executive. Sorry there, Patrick, and the senior officers. Particularly some of those that you just thanked in relation to help you compile your budget, in that sense. But I'm just wondering, is it envy? I'm just trying to wonder why just chief officers. But perhaps that's something for you and your consciences in that sense. The feasibility study for a supermarket in Hendon. Hey ho, £600,000. Well, I'll say I'll say for £600,000. I saying yes. They need a supermarket in Hendon. There we go. Okay.
We don't need to spend £600,000, Councillor.
That's an absolute ridiculous amount. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to finish off by mentioning council tax and council allowances, and I'll just refer you to what I've said over there because it applies to all of you.
Councillor Stewart. Thank you. Leader, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Councillor Edgeworth, but I'm not going to speak about you. Not immediately. Councillor Mullen, you are the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you for speaking on this. I did like your line about extreme Stalinist approach to specific items in specific areas. I didn't realise you were talking about the Conservative amendment. That's exactly what you were doing. So apparently you're all Stalinists. Therefore, you need to change the colour of your T-shirts, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Yes, I do like the fact that both parties, this amendment's the same, move money from Washington to pay for all sorts of things that we need in our wards for the local election. People will just see through it for what it is, and on it goes. What expenses? I don't think anybody on the council claims expenses, Councillor Edgeworth. There may be a budget of £35,000, but nobody ever spends it. I'm fine with that, but councillors, as far as I'm aware, are not claiming expenses. I think we do share the burden as councillors, but we've got to be aware that, as Councillor O'Brien was pointing out, there is a cost of living crisis. There has been a cost of living crisis for quite some time. Everybody has been supported with wage increases and all the rest of it, and council allowances have stayed static for 12 years and have therefore lost 35% of their value. SRAs haven't been touched since 2002. Do you think we should rise? No, I would say no at the moment. When have I ever brought rises on SRAs? What I have done, Councillor Hodgson, is cut 14 of them 4 years ago because it was absolutely the correct thing to do because there were too many allowances. And I got support for doing that, and I thanked everybody for that. But I don't think you can look at me and say that I'm a leader that constantly looks at how I enrich councillors in the teeth of a cost of living crisis. So, if you've got big issues that cost a lot of money, and I do thank Councillor Edgeworth and Councillor Mullen for actually taking me up on that offer to have a chat about things coming into this election. I met with Anthony once. I did have conversations with Paul more than once, and we got more out of that because I genuinely felt that Councillor Edgeworth was actually genuinely trying to work to get things done, whereas there might have been, I could be reading it wrong, Anthony, and I apologise if I am, a bit of lip service being paid to the offer to me, because we only had that one contact. Now, I could go on at length because the Liberal Democrat amendment is enormous. Well, you could say that's lots of good ideas, or you could say something else. What I will say is that, yet again, from both parties, Washington and the coalfields are missing in action from any of your plans. So what was that, Councillor Edgeworth?
More branding, elections, dog parks, extra wards.
One dog park in Washington. Population 70,000. Over 100,000 dogs. It's going to be a busy dog park. Right? Focus from both of you has been on funding shifts into your own wards for election purposes. Everybody can see it. As Councillor Stewart has royally pointed out, you're climate deniers, one and all. And you are, because there's nothing as important as this council being carbon neutral as quick as it can be, and then the city being carbon neutral as quick as it can be. As I don't care about what Keir Starmer said, I'm the leader of this council. It's the truth, and I'm happy to say it. This group of councillors is here to represent the residents who we all work and represent for, right? We will continue with what we need to be doing about carbon reduction because it is probably the one thing that will improve the public health of residents in this city for generations to come. And if you don't want to be part of that, fine. We'll take the credit for it. We'll point you out for what you are. You kite the comms budget. You Liberal Democrats really don't like it, do you? You tell your misinformation, disinformation and lies for free, Paul. It is like your voluntary pay cut you took. No, it wasn't voluntary, right? Absolutely. Now, what happens with the comms budget is obviously we tell, because the residents told us we weren't talking to them enough, which is why we have a comms budget. We now tell residents, and have for the last 4 years, we have a package of measures.
Leader.
5 minutes. Somebody move an extension? Thank you, Councillor Edgeworth. Right. The comms budget. Residents want this. Residents have told us we don't speak to them enough. They want newsletters, they want social media, they want consultation with Ipsos Mori so that they feel that they're engaged with the council, telling the council what they would like. The problem with that comms is that we're delivering that. And you lot hate it because people can see that a Labour-controlled council is delivering what residents want. I have to tell you, the comms budget is staying. And if I could have more money for it, I would do more of it, Councillor Edgeworth. The tone from the Liberal Democrats tonight, I think, genuinely has been excellent. It's been a proper discussion. We need to do more discussions before we get to hear on a couple of those things, because if you genuinely want a big-ticket item to be considered, you need to speak to me so that I can speak to the Labour group so that we can say that's actually quite a good thing to consider because it's citywide. So for next year, but I'll take the incremental step forward this year where at least I got the conversation going. In closing, and once again, this is no reflection on your amendment, and it pains me to do this, but I will be raising a standards complaint against the whole Conservative group for that Facebook post that is a lie, inflammatory and risks making residents fearful. In 20 years as a councillor, I've never complained about anyone, and I've had reason to do it over the last 5 years as the leader, and I haven't done it. And I've never heard such language in the chamber which was just out-and-out lies. And then it's ignored, and the Facebook post is put out by Sunderland Conservatives because they've got time to go out with the budget council. Disgraceful. So I will be doing that in the morning. I look forward to seeing all 12 of you, just before we lose half of you at the locals, all 12 of you up in front of standards. Madam Mayor, I'm going to leave it there. I do appreciate being given the extension. Thank you very much for listening, everybody, and I hope you vote it down.
We'll now vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if the officer could start the vote. So members should be able to vote now. So members, the vote will be closing in a moment. And if we could now close the vote, please. So 22 votes in favour, no abstentions, and 42 votes against. The amendment is defeated.
Does any other member have a comment or question on the original motion? If so, will you please indicate?
Councillor Hodson. Councillor Donaghy. So, Madam Mayor, that's Councillors Hodson and Donaghy, and then the Leader will have the right of reply.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Son. And just a brief citywide topic that's relevant to this budget. John Price mentioned the good news regarding the Culture House. We're all very cautiously optimistic to see that be a fantastic venue. We're all very worried about the ongoing fate of the Glass Centre. But whilst cautiously optimistic about the Culture House, I did just want to comment on page 78 of the budget pack and the Dynamic City Capital Programme, which mentions the ongoing spending around the Sunderland Central Station development. It mentions that the redevelopment of the station, which opened in December, is to provide a new modern facility to act as an improved arrival experience for people arriving into the city by rail. That's what the budget pack in front of us says. The Leader himself described it as stunning and ambitious. This is, I'm afraid, not what the general public of Sunderland are saying about our new railway station. I note in the budget pack that we are about to vote and presumably agree on that there's a further £3 million to be spent in this station redevelopment in 24-25. I really hope that that £3 million will go some way to improving the welcome that railway station offers, because as it stands at the moment, it is at the very least a disappointment. Thank you.
Councillor Donaghy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While the government rightly should accept responsibility for the cuts facing the council, I feel this council must also take its fair share as well. It's easy to attack the government and blame them for everything, for cutting funding and for the rise in council tax. No council wants to increase council tax, and I genuinely believe the Labour Party and the Leader when he says that. But you can't honestly tell me that everything that's in these amendments in this budget is value for money and is giving the people what they want. People want the streets cleaned, they want the bins emptied, they want parks to put in for the children, they want safe, secure streets. Some of that is in there, and I welcome them things coming forward. But there's a lot of vanity projects, and I feel there's a lot of poor investment as well. Excuse me. The Conservative amendment, which was nothing more than social media posts, which we've seen time and time again, year after year, it's a waste of time. You might as well promise free money for everybody. You know it's not going to happen. I don't understand why you do it. I did vote in favour of the Liberal Democrat amendment. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. I like the dog park idea. That was something that was in the Reform Sunderland Manifesto last year, but that was for the wider city. And I echo Councillor Lowes' comments that both of you have taken away from Washington and given nothing back but a dog park. So thank you for that, Councillor. That's all, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Leader, you have the right to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll start with Councillor Donaghy. Good to see you, Paul. I'm trying to work out how you can find time to be a councillor when you're the mayoral candidate for reform. If there's a general election, you'll be the parliamentary candidate for reform, and you're still a candidate to be a councillor. So if all that happens, how are you going to cope with 3 defeats? Secondly, if you were that worried and interested in Washington, mate, you wouldn't have a 27% attendance at Washington Area Committee, because you're never there. So, crocodile tears, and I know it's just a bit of posturing and grandstanding because you're up for election very shortly. The railway station, Councillor Hodson, as you well know, or you should know, Network Rail are responsible for that entranceway. We've reported to them what residents said, that it was bare, and that is coming. So that work will be done. The £3 million that the money that we're spending is on other things related to having a bigger, better station, because we'd like to obviously take the southern entrance and the northern entrance and do all sorts of good things with it and give us a proper railway station that's a real gateway into the city. It's disappointing to note, Madam Mayor, that Sunderland Conservatives are still posting lies about Sanctuary City on social media. They're blaming the Liberal Democrats and the Labour groups for not allowing to come forward, right? And it's on Sunderland corruption now. How'd that happen when we've not even got out of the chamber yet? I wonder who sent that to them, possibly a Conservative councillor. I'm only surmising because nobody else has done it. Right? I remember a conversation that we had, I think it was a couple of years ago now, maybe coming up to 2 years ago now, where we all agreed that we would not get into that gutter politics. We would not engage with that style of site. Now, I know personally at least 3 of them engage with it every week. Right? And they're still doing it, and they're still engaging in gutter politics. They're still grasping desperately for that far-right vote, right? Because that's the only vote they've got. Right? I do appreciate the many sensible conversations and comments that were made by the opposition councillors. Not all of it was bad. Right? We genuinely believe that our our budget is a solid and strong piece of work for the residents of this city. And I would ask that if there's anything that comes forward as an idea, talk to us. I say it every year, I genuinely mean it. I think people who understand it now realise that I mean it. I'm not making politics. I didn't make a single political statement about what you and I discussed. Neither did you, which I was very pleased about. Right? 75 councillors are here to represent the residents of this city and to give them what they need the best possible way, spending the money effectively and delivering efficient services. And that's all that should drive us in this chamber on a budget council. We can disagree about the odd thing, but I'm sick to death now of the minor party, the majority party in opposition as they are again, and their disgraceful behaviour, hiding under the banner of free speech, I'm afraid. So I'll just leave it there, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. That now brings us to the vote on the original motion before the Council, which must be a recorded vote.
So if the officer could start the vote, please. And members should be able to vote now. So, members, the vote will be closing. And if the officer could close the vote now, please. There are 42 votes in favour, no abstentions, and 22 votes against, and therefore the motion's carried.
Thank you. That concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.